Okay, welcome to episode 1 of the Toronto Raptors draft preview show. I got my man Ersin here, all the way from the Netherlands. It's nighttime for him, but nighttime, daytime, we got to talk Toronto Raptors draft. Ersin and I have very, very different draft boards, very different targets in this draft, but the Toronto Raptors have 2 picks, and we're going to get into a lot of things in this episode. We're going to be talking about Ersin's big board. We're going to be debating Khaman Malauch versus Derik Queen. We're going to be talking about the guards. We're going to have a very, very surprising reveal in terms of who the number 2 player on Ersin's board is. It's not a player that I've been very high on, but Ersin might just sell me on him. So, Ersin, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks Robert for the invitation. Salute to Raptors Nation. Yeah, man. Let's see the talk draft. The last time I was checking, Kawhi was there, and you guys won a championship. But right now, it's a top 10 pick coming in, so a lot of things have to happen.
I really am praying for a top 4 pick personally, but yeah, I mean
Yeah.
the last time the Raptors were at number 7, they got Scotty Barnes. So I'm like, can Lightning strike twice in the same section? That would be great.
Yeah, man.
Happy Easter to everyone who celebrates. This is Easter Sunday over here. If you are curious about checking out Ersin's draft board and checking out his draft content, there's a link in the description for his Substack. Definitely consider giving him a follow, subscribe, check him out. He's really, really detail oriented. I have always wanted to have people on this channel who were hard workers and people who cared about what they do. And clearly from his work, you can tell this is a draft sicko here. This is a complete
Man,
sicko of the
thanks, man.
draft. Yeah, appreciate you, man. I'm thankful that you're coming on here, and I'm sure our community is going to get a lot about this. Okay, so number one, we just got to talk about your overall thoughts of the 2025 draft. How strong is this draft? You've been following it for a few years now. How high are you on this class overall relative to other classes? Is there maybe another draft class that you would compare this one to?
Nah, I think in terms of depth, it's becoming not so good because of all these guys going back to school for NIL. So, for NBA teams, that's a problem because they have a smaller pond to fish from. And honestly, in terms of talent, I like this class, man, because if you have the number 3 overall pick, you can get great value. But the number 10 is the same thing. I think that every team will get a good role player in this draft. I think it's more of a role players draft, just like last year. But I think this year's class is more top heavy. And in terms of depth, yeah, man, most guys, if they don't get first round buys, they go back to school. It's easy as that. So I think the depth part is an issue, but I think it's a decent class, man. I think it's not as good as it was advertised, mostly because of, yeah, guys not really, having the incentive to go one and done if they not really ready for it. So I think
Who
that takes away some of the hype. But I'm more excited for next year's class, man, which will be much more better than this one, in my opinion.
I certainly think the 2026 class is better. There's like literally top 3. I think all those guys could go number 1 and would give Cooper some run in this draft. But last year, I was very, very loud that the draft wasn't as bad as advertised, that there was a lot of depth in last year's draft. The Raptors found that last year. So I'm curious. This wasn't on our questions list, but I'm curious because I know that you know a lot about these players. The Raptors got Jacoby Walter at 19, right? A lot of people saw him as a lottery pick early in the cycle. They got Jamal Shed at 45, Jonathan Mobo, at 31. They got Jameson Battle of the undrafted heap, and then Over Shamshi out of the, NBA Africa Academy. Raptor fans are very excited about these 5 players. I think they all flashed a lot of potential this year. Ulrich was averaging nearly 3 blocks a game in the G League. He came along very nicely. Jacoby shot in the second half of the season nearly 39% from 3 after struggling with his shoulder early on. Mobo is the only rookie of this class to get a triple double. It's kind of like against a bad team, but nevertheless, a lot of talent there. And then, of course, Jameson Battle, I think, might be the best 3-point shooter or one of the top 3 3-pointer shooters in this class. And that certainly was not expected coming from an undrafted guy, right? Jamal Shed, I think he set the second highest assists for any Raptors rookie ever. And if you think about all the Raptors rookies in the last 30 years, it's been a lot of good ones. How do you feel about the Raptors draft class last year and how the Raptors did in the class?
Man, the Raptors front office always do the homework well, man. They draft with an idea, and what I like about the Raptors is they are not scared to develop. They take their time. And of course, OG Anunoby is one of the front runners, but OG Anunoby had to have a couple of years before he really got rolling. I think the Raptors is one of the best places to end up with. because of the Raptors 905, they utilize the G League very well. So even if you don't get minutes, they have a plan for you. That's what I like about the Raptors. But this year it was, yeah, they were likely going to be bad, despite Barnes' ascending toward all-star level player. And the issue actually is, yeah, they were forced to develop guys, not to mitigate what they did or say it wasn't good, but they were forced to develop players, and they did. Because if I look at teams like the Wizards, who give Poole, who give Kuzma all these minutes, all these touches, the Raptors didn't do that, man. The Raptors really focused. Okay, what's our team going forward, and what can we develop? And they did that. So that's what I like, man. I think it's a positive, and it's a good sign for the guys in this class as well that the Raptors have 2 first-round picks.
Well, they have one first round pick and then they have a second pick, which will be 39 or 40, I think, with the Portland Trailblazers.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and they ended up moving a 2026 first, which you'll probably be very sad about, for Brandon Ingram, that Indiana pick that probably will be mid first round in 2026. I don't know. I just hope Dash Daniels is not picked with that pick because I'm going to be really pissed off if that happens.
Yeah.
But I think he's gonna be a little bit higher. You mentioned a lot of players going back to school. Are there, like, I know Andrei Stojakovic is going back. I was kind of pissed off about that. But any notable names that you're like, shoot, that might have been a first round pick if he'd stayed, but now he's gone and it really hurts.
I think Stojakovic is the biggest one, man, because I had him as a first rounder myself. For me, actually, it made it a lot easier, because you have 50 guys you want to put in the first round, and yeah, who are you gonna give the place, the number 25, number 26? Actually, I wrote about Bruce Thornton earlier today. I was sad about him from Ohio State. 6'2",
Mm,
built like a rock, a true floor general, not the type of guy that the Raptors need. But yeah, I think let's say he can crack rotation next year. But yeah, why should he? He's a junior. He can return to school and return to Ohio State, get some more money, and then go to the NBA. I think for draft fans, it's actually a positive that these guys are not declaring, because you have all these guys that you will wish, okay, they need to play and they don't play.
mhm.
So going back to school is maybe delaying your NBA future and hurting your draft stocks in the future. But if they go back to school, then you can follow them again to see what they worked on, because every player has something to develop. And by going back to school, you can show who's really developing, instead of always banking on their natural talent, because you have a lot of these guys as well. And if a guy goes one and done, that's harder to detect. If a
I
guy,
I think a lot of NBA teams don't develop well. There's a lot of teams that just say, okay, you're here, you're in the pros. It's up to you whether you want minutes. It's up to you whether how good you want to get. I think what I appreciate about teams like OKC, teams like Memphis to some extent, Toronto, is they actually do take the time to develop. They use their G League programs, the Memphis Hustle, whatever, and the Raptors 905, and they actually prioritize that. And I think the Raptors, if they want to look at their championship blueprint, Fred VanVleet, Norman Powell, OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam, Jakob Pertl. It's weird how sometimes we look back at that team and we're like, wow, there was like 9 starters on that team. You know what I mean? But that's how you win championships, is by developing. And if you look at right now, the OKC Thunder just made history. I don't know if you watched it. Biggest
sort
game
of
one,
40 points or something, right? That's crazy.
51 point win, and they just blew the shit. And then you're looking and you see Nikola Topic in street clothes, and you're like, my God, man. Like, when that guy comes in next year and he's developing even right now, even though he's in street clothes and he's been injured all year, like that's another piece. And then they got draft picks and they scout so well. So you're like, okay, this is the formula for any team that's not in New York, LA, maybe Boston, whatever, Miami. If you're not a free agent destination, you got to develop. And I think you're right. Like, a lot of teams don't develop, so it's good for these kids to go back. I think there's a lot of kids, especially when high schoolers were allowed to come out, that maybe just they could have been like 3-time All-Stars, but they were out of the league in 3 years because they just didn't have the right guidance. They found themselves in the wrong situation. Okay, let's talk about the 2025 draft. Are there any prospects that you believe, like, I'm sure you read the general consensus mock drafts, the ESPNs, the Jonathan Gavonis, whatever. There's a pretty strong consensus 4, 5 players that always end up at the top. Cooper Flag, Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper, VJ Edgecombe, and then maybe Khaman Malauch, depending on who you're reading. Maybe it's Trey Johnson. Are there a couple players that just stick out as this player is really overrated by the consensus, and this player is really underrated by the consensus for you?
Yeah, man. The overrated one is Kasparas Jakucionis.
Okay.
And from someone who have seen him, for 2 years before he went to college, I can understand the hype. But if I look at the NBA game and what he does, it's not really correlating well. He's more of a European guard, if that makes sense. Angles, fundamentals, you know, not really change of pace with speed, but with angles, angle creation. And that's the type of guy that's going to score in the NBA, but he's not a good athlete, in my opinion. What I like about him is they got much stronger compared to earlier years. And he always fights himself, a way to get downhill. But that's more of a college game, in my opinion. What don't like about him is he's always deferring to his step back. He can get in the paint, especially in elite at backs, and he always, gambles on his step back. And he's a great shooter. I think in the NBA, his shot is going to develop and his shot is going to translate.
Mhm.
But a guy like him needs ball touches. And something that I've learned in the last 2 years is, NBA teams are not really, dying to give a ball to a rookie. The rookie has to earn the touches. And if I take away his touches, what else do they offer me? The shooting, but what else? There it stops. So I think it's paying a premium for hype, for European hype, because yeah, the NBA loves European players. For me, it's no issue at all. But yeah, because these guys never got the love. Now they get too much love, if that makes sense. And Kasparas is one of the guys who, yeah, if he goes top 10, I don't really see him, being a top 10 guy in terms of value. Will
Is
he
there a
be a
team that
decent
he
role player
could
in
go
this
to?
league? No doubt.
Is there a team he can go to that maybe it might work out okay?
I think Orlando will work out, man. I think Orlando needs size and they have a lot of guards, but they don't have a guard like him, if that makes sense, because they prioritize size. And if
Mhm.
he's being used out of closeouts to make plays out of closeouts, his angle creation will look much better. But at Illinois, he was asked to lead the entire team, which he loves to do. You have to facilitate him. But if he can scale his role down to, to leverage more of his shooting prowess and, making plays out of closeouts, he's going to be good. But the other side of the coin is defensively, he's going to struggle, man, regardless of where you put him. Because I think the lack of athleticism is being compensated by he is strong. And that's something that he had to work on, and he did. So that's a good thing for him.
Mhm.
But top 10, in a class like this means, okay, he should at least be a starter. But that's something that I don't really see for him, man.
Hmm. I think he could be a really good sixth man if he has a really good defensive team around him. Personally, I'm not very high on him either. So this is we'll put this as a check mark where we agree on someone.
Yeah.
We don't agree on a hell of a lot. I'm looking at your draft board. I disagree with a lot, but I'm very curious to learn more because I think you've watched these prospects more than I have. I got into this draft cycle maybe a year and a half ago, and I really, really got into it about 6 months ago. There's only so much you can glean from that. So I think, yeah. So are there any other players that you think are overrated by the consensus?
I think Kon Knueppel is the second one, man.
Okay,
I
now
think it's
now
a
we
Duke
now we get
pedigree.
to a disagreement. Okay,
Yeah.
let's talk about
Yeah.
this.
Nah, I think that's more of the Duke pedigree, man. And he's playing alongside Cooper Flag. And I'm basing this on the early season stuff that I saw from him. I
Mhm.
didn't watch much of Duke's recent games where he much better. And what you heard about him, that he was much better. But for a guy like him to succeed in the NBA, he has
Mhm.
the strength. For a freshman, that's impressive. He has the size. He has the positional size to be a 2 or a 3, or maybe how much he gets stronger, maybe even play as a smaller 4. But that's future. But right now, the shot is the thing that's going to be translatable, and that's something that people like. So, it's, to this point, I think we agree. The shot's definitely going to translate. But what I saw from him early in the season, and I hope that he worked on it a lot since then, is his shot was so easily to take away, man, because he didn't have much counters. A weak handle and out of closeouts, he didn't really convince me at all.
Mm.
So if you take away his shot, what else does he do? And for the guy to be top 10, you have to be creative. You have to at least show improved handles or decent handles that you can express your creativity to attack the glass, attack closeouts. Because pick and roll playmaking or pick and roll shot creation isn't really relevant in the early years because they don't get the touches, but they have to earn the touches via closeouts. And if they
Mm,
can move good off the ball in actively cutting, finding their spots with pivoting their foot well that they can decide to either dribble, pass, or shoot, that's a good spot to be in. I think for Kon Knueppel, he grew in that role, but eventually I stopped watching Duke, man, because I really focus more on the less heralded guys, and then you check out of these top 5 teams. But from the
mm,
early season stuff that I saw, his shot was easily taken away in the big games that Duke played because teams knew how to counter him. And the lucky part for him is the team was all set. It was built around Cooper Flag, but he was the number 2. So that counts something as well. I think he's going to be a first round pick, no doubt, maybe top 20, but I don't really see the lottery buzz at all.
I'll tell you what I like about him. Number one, low center of gravity. Like really, he moves guys out of the way really well. Number two, I really like that he, as the season went on, he did figure out some counters. So if they try to take away the three, they run him off the line. There's like a couple dribbles and then a side and maybe a turnaround jumper that he's comfortable going to. Number three, he's never rattled. And this is something I really care about with prospects as we talk about getting up to a bigger stage, going up against better competition. His eyes are always center. This is maybe like very, out there for some people, but he doesn't get moved by the moment. Like he was probably the most composed player for the entire run for Duke's entire tournament run. Tough shot, tough result, tough, like turnover. He just moves on really well, which I kind of appreciate about him. His court mapping was special to me. Now, he didn't have the ball a lot in his hands because Duke has 2 senior guards or, upperclassmen as guards. Cooper does a lot of ball handling. So I feel like had he been in the same position as Kasparas, I think, where he was given so much run, or Egor Demin, I think he might have shown more of the playmaking upside. I don't think he's a primary playmaker. I think he has a great connective, blueprint that he could go
Yeah.
towards. I see bits and pieces of a lot of players. Now, first of all, you don't know me well enough to know this, but I've been notoriously low on white American prospects. I'm burned by Adam Morrison. I don't know. This is like these are scars, man. These are scars that go back like to Christian
Yeah.
Laettner. Okay. I always feel like they get super hyped by like super North American media and they're just like, oh my God, that guy looks like my son. So he's gonna be great. And I feel like these guys, you talk about Europeans getting hyped. Like I've watched like JJ Redick and those guys get hyped. So I'm
Yeah,
always a
Jimmy
little
for that,
skeptical.
these guys.
Jimmer Fredette mania. My God, So I am scarred to hell by some of these guys. But I got to tell you, Kon is like one of the first players outside of Cooper Flag that I've just been like, okay, I see it. So very curious, to see if you watch more of his more recent tape, if you come around on him a little bit more. Are there any other players that you feel are very overrated?
I think it's more context based, man, because if I look at some of the names at the top, yeah, I don't really want to make a discussion out of a discussion, but if I look at a guy, for example, wait, let me think about it. If this is a good option to take or not, man. But if I see a guy like, wait, I'm flashing on the name. I don't know what happened, man, baby, because I'm not really podcasting that much. But if I look at a guy like Jeremiah Fears, I like him
Mhm.
myself, but the last few days I'm talking myself out of him, man.
Hmm.
Because I always going back to the basic with these guys. You watch a guy play and then be like, okay, you're either you're not convinced or you're convinced a lot. So what I did last time about him is okay, what is his positive
Mhm.
and what's the likeliness that the NBA is going to ban on these guys? For him, the likeliness, I think if he comes out 15 years ago, he's a top 5 pick. He's going to be a starter in the league forever. But the thing that I've learned during the years is, there's so much competition among guards is that you really have to have elite traits if you want to translate early. For example,
Mm.
John Morant, elite athlete. That's something that we always would be in his advantage, even if he has a bad season at Murray State or something like that. But for
Right.
Jeremiah Fields, is more so he was young for his class, and if everyone says Cooper did this that at 17 years old, they should have talked the same way about him, which they didn't. So that's unfair to him. But if I look at Fierce's NBA career, okay, how's his first year going to look like? Is it something like the guy who from Kentucky who went to Minnesota, something like him? I keep flashing all these names, man. Now,
Rob Dillingham to
yeah,
me,
Rob
like
Dilly, yeah,
so Dillingham to me is just like I was not a big Dillingham guy. Like I didn't see like he's so much smaller than Fierce, number one, right? And I just think Fierce has way more of like an explosion at the rim, and his handle might. I'm cautious when I say this. I think he probably has the best handle in this draft. Like
yeah.
he's
Those are
so
the two
shit.
combinations I like as well. Elite
So
speed, elite handles, creativity. That's the base. But the
right.
defensive side is where I'm really thinking, okay, is a team okay with betting on a guy like that? Because you have to feed him the ball. That's where I always think about, okay, maybe I'm too hesitant in putting guards up, especially guards at 6'3", 6'4". If he'll measure out 6'4" in socks, that's great. But he'll likely not, because most of these schools, they just pump up the size. I think he's
He
6'2",
could still be
6'3".
growing. He could possibly
Yeah.
still be growing. We don't know. At
Yeah, at this
18,
age, no doubt.
shit, we saw Giannis grow 3 inches from when he
Yeah,
was 18. So
yeah, exactly.
maybe. Okay. So those are some players that maybe you feel are overrated. Are there some players that you think are criminally underrated? And I have a feeling I know exactly where you're going with this, but you know,
Yeah, we touched on it a little bit, man, because I think if I look at the class, it's more so role player heavy. And some of these role players, man, they should be a lot higher with things that they already bring to the table. I think
mm,
Arizona's Carter Bryant is going to be a lottery pick, maybe even top 12, depending how the summer goes. I think he's the first name, man. And I was late to watching him because with his as a 5-star, you always have the advantage. People are going to watch you. But when I saw him, man, that guy is built like a football player, man. 6'8", NBA ready body, insane frame, man. So well filled. I think he can even get stronger in the next few years if he needs to. And the shot is just bread and butter, man. It's just great. If he shot 30%, I would say the same thing. So the percentage is not really relevant, man. This whole shot process.
I think his
Sets
defense
speed
is so
quickly,
special. I
high
think
arcing shot.
yeah, I think his defense is so special. Like I moved Carter Bryant from like 19th on my board about 3 months ago to all the way into the top 10 recently. And it's taken just a lot of film study on him to just sort of see how I think a player like this could translate to a bigger court with better talent, right? Again, every time I watch him, I'm just like, okay, that's amazing. That's amazing. That's amazing. Like he just does like 17 amazing things every time you watch him, right? And when you really slow down the tape, you're like, how did he get that block? How did he get a deflection there? How did he shut down? His basketball IQ is actually quite great. His dad is a coach. So Deshane Bryant was he coached Kawhi Leonard in high school. So, there's like weirdly enough, I'm not comparing him to Kawhi Leonard, obviously. That would be like the extreme upside of a
Yeah.
3 and D guy morphing into that type of player. But I wonder if maybe like a lot of freshmen, there might be a little bit more creativity to his game that could come out. Like there's shades I see sometimes of Jason Tatum in him. Maybe his handle is not strong enough, but his frame is like legitimately Jason Tatum-esque. Like he is a legit 6'8", probably 6'9" in shoes, probably 7'3" ish wingspan, has the size probably to guard 3 to 4 positions, like comfortably. Like with the league going bigger, maybe he won't be able to guard the Zach Edey's and the Donovan Klingons of the world. There's a lot of small ball centers that I would feel perfectly comfortable in a few years with him guarding. He's 19, so he's a little bit older for his draft class. He's going to be 20 on November 26th. So he'll be 19 at the draft. It's not old. It's not Jeremiah Fears, and he's a year older than those guys. So he's had that development. And I think the fact that his box score numbers were not jumping off the page is probably pushing some people away from him. But I've always believed that there's like draft risers every year. 4 years ago it was Scotty Barnes. Moved all the way from like, is he going to be top 10 to boom, top 4. I think Dyson Daniels was another huge draft riser a few years ago, where some people were saying second round, mid first round, and he moved all the way to 8 and was being considered all the way up at 5. I think there's something that a lot of these players that rise up draft boards have in common. They're freakishly impressive in person. Dwayne Wade was another famous draft riser in 2003. Like, when you see a guy on television, when you see him on your screen, I think it's different. When you see someone in person, I think that's when, like, the Carter Bryant effect, when he walks into your gym and he starts slamming shots and hitting like 18 threes in a row from the corner. I feel like that, oh my God, that's an NBA player, is going to hit a lot of GMs. And I would not be surprised if he goes top 8.
Yeah, man, I totally agree with you on that, man. Because of the body, that's the most natural self for me. I think the body's NBA ready, and he
Mm,
showed so many flashes, just like you said, man. I think that's enough for me. That
yeah.
an NBA team that's willing to develop is gonna bet on him, man, and he's going to be a good starter at worst.
Yeah.
Because the other side of the coin is how much is a team willing to bet on a guy. So that's always the question. Some teams don't, just like you said,
Mhm.
and some teams are bad at it. But some teams are willing to take 2 or 3 years and just say, okay, this is house money. 2 or 3 years, go convince me that you're worth the rest of your second extension for me. That you get
Yeah.
the second contract, and that's the way it should go, But that's not really the NBA anymore.
I think a lot of teams would agree that usually rookies cost you minutes, right? Bob
Yeah,
Carrington, as talented as he is, Alex Sarr, as talented as he is, Zachary Sachet, as talented as he is, they lost their minutes this year. That's a fair price. Even Stefan Castle, who's prohibitively favored to win Rookie of the Year, probably wasn't like a top 150 player in the league, which means because he's playing high rotation minutes, he's costing you wins. Like, he's nowhere near, where he's going to be in a few years, but this is the concession. My view on it is your game role player adaptable enough? While you may be a high lottery pick with all this upside, do you have a version of you that we can put on the court for 20 minutes a night where you're not going to kill my minutes? Defense is usually like the great equalizer in that situation. Like a guy like Colin Murray Boyles, maybe like really far away as a jump shooter, but I think he can probably, his screen setting, secondary playmaking, and some of his rebounding and defense could probably make him like, it's not going to kill you to put him out there for 15, 20 minutes. Like, a winning team could use him in a limited role as his role expands. It's kind of like, I consider it the Kawhi Leonard blueprint, right? Can you limit his game to a serviceable role as you expand the other areas of his game, in the off season? I think that there are a few players in this draft who really fit that mold pretty well, right? Now, another player that you're super high on, I'm going to flash your board here for everybody else. This is Ersan's oh, this is like from, let's see, when did you do this? April
yeah,
14th. So 6
yeah.
days
So
ago.
last week,
And this is your
yeah.
big board. Maybe some stuff has changed over the week, but I assume not a lot has. And Ersan has, he has your consensus number one at number one, which is Cooper Flag. But he has a very surprising name at number 2, and that's Trey Johnson. We were just discussing him off air, and we're going to get into Trey Johnson, what he likes about him. Dylan Harper at number 3. Ace Bailey at number 4. Again, a prospect that we need to discuss because I have a lot of questions. Derik Queen at number 5. Noah Essengue at number 6. Number 7 is Jeremiah Fierce, who he may be moving down. We don't know. 8, Colin Murray Boyles, one of my favorite prospects. VJ Edgecombe at number 9. A lot of people have him as potentially top 3 picks. So I'll be curious to know why you're a little bit lower on him. Asa Newell out of Georgia at number 10. And 11, Khaman Malauch, number 8. 12, Rasheer Fleming. Number 13, Liam McNeely, a prospect that I am so low on at this point. He might not make my top 20. And Carter Bryant, 14. Nolan Traore, again, a player that is very polarizing for a lot of people. People have a lot of questions about the season he just had. But the talent is the talent. Jace Richardson from Michigan State, son of Jason Richardson at number 16. Nick Clifford, big riser this year. Big riser for a senior at 17. Kasparas Jakucionis, who we discussed earlier, at 18. Maxime Renaud at number 19. And then Kon Knueppel, the aforementioned Kon Knueppel, all the way at 20. So, okay. So in terms of Raptor fans right now, most Raptor fans are thinking about this draft as, we need a center, we need a center, we need a center. There's a lot of reasons for that. Number one, we're very heavy at guard. We're really heavy at forward. We just traded for Brandon Ingram. And there's just there's really not a lot of options at backup center for us right now. We played, you know, Orlando Robinson at backup center behind Jakob Poeltl. We played him in place of Jakob Poeltl. Orlando got waived. So a rim protecting. Now, here's a fun fact, and I'm curious to know your thoughts on this. Do you know that the Raptors were a top 3 defense in the NBA over the last 44 games?
No, I didn't, man.
Is that
But if
shocking or
I
what?
look at these teams, it kind of makes, yeah, it's maybe easy to say, but it kind of makes sense. And
It's
if it's
shocking.
okay with you, I want to explain why. With the with the draft selection at center in mind, I think what I like about the Raptors, and it's going on for 4 or 5 years, you guys always draft size and physical potential. Physical potential, not really what is this guy doing now. That's not relevant. But what can I develop him into? And I think the development is the card that the Raptors heavily play. They want to develop guys, but they don't want to develop roles. And they took Scotty Barnes. He was what, sixth man at Florida State. He was not really a starter, but they saw potential. And then you were willing to trade OJ and Anunoby, and they took back Barrett and Quickly. Okay, Quickly maybe he got too much money, but Barrett and Quickly were both highly heralded guys. Quickly more experience out of college, and Barrett just physical tools. And now you get Brandon Ingram. I think he fits in the physical mold of his own, with his combination of body fluidity, size, and handles.
Mhm.
And I think the center position is going to be the complementary piece, because the center is the easiest thing to replace in the NBA, but the most vital thing to play 4 or 5 out, which is the NBA is going to play in the next few years. The Raptors don't really have shooting. I was looking at the 3-point numbers, and the Raptors barely take threes compared to the rest of the league. And with guys like Ingram, I understand why, but that's why you have Quickly. And Barrett is, yeah, and in New York, he wasn't really the shooter. He wanted to be, and he had to
Ingram,
be, but he
yeah,
didn't really
Ingram, in
develop it.
fairness, didn't play for us, and Scotty had a very, very down year in shooting. He shot 27%, but largely that was due to a very different diet of threes. So last year, Scotty had an entire stretch to open the season for about 3 months where he shot 39% from three. Again, high volume, 39%. That was very encouraging. Then it kind of fell down to earth. And then this year, instead of corner threes off of kickouts, and he was creating step backs and, pull ups from like 28 feet. Totally different diet of shots for Scotty this year. I think Brandon Ingram will help when he plays next year. I think BI is a good shooter. He doesn't take a lot of threes, but he's a good shooter. So I think Darko will convince him to take more threes. He's convinced everybody to take more threes. He's doubled Scotty's 3-point attempt rate. He's doubled, I think almost doubled RJ's 3-point attempt rate from where he was in New York. He preaches the right stuff when it comes to basketball fundamentals and analytics. So I think Ingram, unlike Barnes and RJ, where there's so many questions about their jump shot, I think Ingram, to me, is a really good shooter. He just consistently takes mid-range shots, and I think he'll just have to adapt to go further out, and hopefully that'll unclog the paint for the Raptors. I think Grady Dick is a fantastic shooter. I don't even care about his percentages at this point. I really don't. I watch this guy shoot like every day. I think he's a phenomenal shooter. And I think Jamison Battle is one of the most underrated shooters, college basketball last year for the Ohio State. Fantastic shooter. And it translated to the NBA level. He was great. Jacoby Walter, again, 39% for the second half of the season. I think he can shoot. And then, the non-shooters on the team, Jonathan Mobo, Jamal Shed, et cetera, they made a lot of progress this year too, to what, they were trending above 30%. So again, I'm not saying shooting is a strength. I don't think that. I think if I could point to two major, major, major holes for the Raptors this year, number one, self-creation off the dribble. Huge problem. Quickly isn't great at it. RJ is better at it than most players, but it's very undynamic. It's not shifty like Darius Garland. It's kind of like straight line drives off of handoffs. Barnes struggles tremendously in this role, as a self-generator without an advantage, like a screen, assist or whatever coming his way. And then obviously there's so many complications with a Barnes Jakob pick and roll because neither of them are a threat to score. So teams are able to change their coverage on the screen very much. And there's nothing off the bench that's necessarily dynamic off the dribble. There's no Devin Bookers. There's nothing like that coming off. There's not even a Rob Dillingham on this team, that kind of shifty ball handler who can kind of create. Jamal Shed masqueraded as that occasionally, but I think that's a big issue. Rim protection is probably also a big issue. Now, I mentioned they were a top 3 defense, but the schedule was lighter, over the last 44 games than it was over the first half of the season. So I don't think I'm looking at this team like, hey, if they add a non-defender like or a worse defender like Liam McNeely in this draft, they're just going to be just as good defensively. No, I think they actually need defense from this pick, specifically rim protection. I don't necessarily think Jakob Poeltl is a great rim protector. I don't think he's a bad rim protector, but when we talk about rim protection, there's some really good rim protectors in this draft, from Khaman Malauch to even potentially Ace Bailey, as a kind of like offside rim protector. There's Cooper Flagg, obviously. Then there's guys like Ryan Kaukbrenner who could pop. You have them a little bit higher on your board than I think most people do. So yeah, those are sort of the needs positionally that I need for the Raptors. Now, obviously, they're going to take the best player available. If the best player available on the board when they pick is Dylan Harper, and they're going to pick Dylan Harper. If it's Derik Queen, they're going to pick Derik Queen. Specifically, I think the Raptors, fans are honing in on that 5 spot because it's the least congested depth position for the Raptors. You have Derik Queen considerably higher than Khaman Malauch. These are 2 prospects that we have been debating a lot on this channel. Sell me on why you have Derik Queen at 5, whereas Khaman Malauch is at 12. I
Yeah,
like
man.
both.
If I look at both, I'm looking at the future. I think Queen has the most offensive value and has the more role value. That's why I'm having him higher. But defensively, Kaman Malauch is in a league of his own. But offensively, what's his role is going to be? Always complementary. So that's not really the kind of guy that's going to be top 5. Even if he's one of the best defensive 5s in the league, it's more so you need a lot of offense around him to make it work. And that's why it kind of takes away the value for me to take him in the top 5. Because with Derek Queen, I don't think he's a good fit for the Raptors at all, man. Because you need to feature him as a hub to make it work. And I don't think really the Raptors
Does he
should
remind you of
want that.
Schengen? Does he remind you of Schengen a little bit?
Yeah, I know that's the comparison, but with him it was the same problem. It was you have to feature him, which is Club Beşiktaş in Turkey did,
Mm-hmm.
and then it was more of a marketing stunt actually because he won MVP of the league, etc. Because everyone knew he's going to the NBA. He want to help him as good as possible, just like Wembanyama. But Wembanyama didn't need it. But it was the same thing. This team featured him and basically said, "Do what you want to do." And Beşiktaş was competitive with Schengen on the team. That was a big difference for Schengen, which really, convinced me he's going to play in the NBA. But that's all a side story. I think with Derek Queen is if you feature him, good things going to happen on the offensive end. And defense, that's something that he has to learn. I think he's not really processing the game on the defensive end as good as he does on offense because in offense, he's really unleashed. He's free. He's creative, and that's where he's mostly doing most damage because I think he feels most comfortable. But defensively, yeah, man, it's just a combination of heavy footedness and too reactive, too passive as a defender. So if someone jabs or pump fakes him, yeah, then it's gonna work. But for a guy like Malauch to move him, yeah, man, you have to be one of the best scorers in the NBA. I think despite him being so young and despite him being so lanky, actually, he's going to bulk up and he's going to be one of the more impactful defenders. But offensively, yeah, man, it's not really his game, and it shouldn't really be his game. Maybe if he takes a couple of threes as a screener,
Mm-hmm.
as a pickup prop to the elbow to the from above the break, that's okay. But I think with him, the biggest need is okay, how well is the screening going to develop? And both guys, in my opinion, are not really that good of a screener, but Malauch has the most potential, in my opinion, if he gets stronger. And
I
that's
think
really going to work the best way in the NBA. More as that secondary passer. I think he's a good passer. Before Duke, he was a decent passer. Now he's a better passer, in my opinion.
I think Queen is a special passer, personally. Malauch is developing, and I think the Raptors can probably make it better. Like we saw Orlando Robinson get much better as a passer. We've seen Jakob Poeltl develop much more as a passer. He had a career year as a passer this year. I think it's a prerequisite. So last year going into the draft, I had Yves Missi higher on my board than almost anyone in the world. Like I thought the Raptors no brainer at 19, Yves Missi. We need this guy. The Raptors passed on him for Jacoby Walter, which was surprising to me given Masai Ujiri has shown maybe a preference for African prospects. I'm like, shit, you got a Cameroonian prospect. You have a huge history of Cameroon. You probably know more about this kid than anyone in the NBA, and you passed on him. I was second guessing myself a lot. And then I studied more Baylor tape on Yves Missi, and I saw he's really not a very good passer. He really doesn't see the game that well. I mean, maybe he'll develop in that regard, and maybe he's gotten better since I watched him. But I think passing is a prerequisite for Darko's system from the big, which makes Derek Queen a really good fit. I think the thing that makes him not a good fit is everybody else who's already here. Jakob Pertl, Scotty Barnes, Brandon Ingram. This is a mess. For him to come in on a roster that features those three players presents all the same issues as Colin Murray Boyles coming into a roster that features those three players. You're taking away the area of the court that he most likes to operate in. I think Khaman might be actually better for the Raptors, largely because I do believe in his shooting potential a lot. Like, I really do think he's going to be able to shoot the three at a competent, 34, 36% level within a couple of years. I think he has smaller hands than the average 7'2 guy, which, weirdly enough, is going to help him. Like, he has soft hands. He has really good touch. He showed a lot of progress as a free throw shooter. I've been watching him for 3 years now. Come on. And I just see him get better and better and better every single time I watch him, to the point where I think maybe, okay, he'll never have the creativity and the vision and the court mapping that Derek Queen does. He's never going to really process the game as well as Derek Queen does offensively. I think he has very, very special court mapping abilities defensively, not to mention, obviously, the physical size, tools, etc. So, yeah, I mean, I think it can go either way. I was curious why you had one so much higher, but I think looking at your board, you really do value offensive output and
Yeah.
upside a little bit more than maybe I do. Whereas I really value sort of like that two-way impact. So to me, a player like Herb Jones is probably a lot more valuable than a guy like, I don't want to say Herb Jones is more valuable than Austin Reeves, because that might be stupid to say right now, because he's not. But I think I'll probably be much closer on those two players than
Yeah, I understand
maybe
what
you
you
would
mean.
be.
You value
Okay.
defense
I value
now. And
defense a lot. Yeah, I do. I think I value defense precisely because, I just watched the OKC Thunder blow out a team by 51. That's why I value defense. Like, it's not just any type of defense either. It's that positional versatility which sort of complicates the offense, right? Like, you think when you have Case and Wallace on you and you're like 6'7" that you have a mismatch. But I assure you, you do not have a mismatch. Like, he's going to strip the ball away from you. And that's why I was so much higher than consensus on Case and Wallace when he was coming out, because I was just like, okay, a lot of people had him like 20, 21, 22 early in the process. I was like, no, 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 no. This guy's got to be like top 10 because he's going to provide so much value there. So it's the same thing with Drew Holiday. I was higher on Drew Holiday coming into the draft as well. So okay, so we get out of that come on talk, and a question that I have for you is: there's two players who are actually similar on the glance, but you seem to be a little bit higher on Rasheer Fleming per your big board than Carter Bryant. Rasheer is a little bit older, he is a little bit bigger. What do you see in Rasheer? And he's the growth in his game, year 1, year 2, year 3, is like clockwork. It's ridiculous how much his stats reflect like year by year growth. I can't think of one thing that he's worse in year to year. So he's obviously working, and he's working hard, and he's jumping his volume. But what do you like about Rasheer Fleming that puts him this high on your board for you?
I think the team context helps him a lot, man, because he played with Eric Reynolds, Xavier Brown, and I like those two guys a lot. This team is a 4-year program, one of the best in college basketball, and now they have some transfers going out. But regarding, if you look at this game, Rasheer Fleming, physical tools. That's the main sell with him. And he's easily to be put in a box. And I know NBA scouts are lazy, man. They just want to know what am I looking for and what's the most feasible thing that's going to happen if he gets 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Can he translate into that role? I think Fleming is going to translate into a great complementary role exactly, as you pointed out, is he develops every year. And the role with him is easy. He doesn't really have to be a starter level player. He is just going to have to be physically stronger that he can switch, respond to switches. That's just going to be the main role. And he's going to be a ball mover. And if he makes threes when he's open, that's enough. I don't really think he has to show any creativity, if that makes sense, but he has
Sure.
to take away mismatches. So if you have a team with an undersized guard, that's the guy that you have to have on the floor, man. That's that you guy that you wanna switch, maybe even to the 5, because even if he's a bit smaller to guard against much longer fives,
Hmm.
he is definitely stronger, man. Not if he is not even as long as him. So
You
that's what I
project
like,
him as
man.
a
If
five?
he's, I think he's gonna be a 4, but I think he can even switch against the 5, especially
Hmm.
with NBA's prioritize so much of these, pick and pop option. The other side of the coin with these guys is okay in the lane. What's he gonna do? I think Rasheer Fleming is going to be one of the better role players as interior defenders. I
Hmm.
like. There's not really the same as we discussed, but with him is the role is just too easy, man. But the role is just vital to have. For example, the Spurs. Wembanyama is one of the best players in the league, but physically, okay, if you play really hard on him, how's he going to respond? He's not physically ready. That's where you have to have a guy like him to make it work. I value these role players a lot, man. That's
I
something
do.
that I
I
always
do
catch
too.
myself with.
Yeah, I value role players as well. I mean, if you look at his numbers, I mean, honestly, this is one of like the better progression charts that I've ever seen in my life. I mean, this is similar to I can't even think of the last time that I've seen a player get this much better at everything. I mean, we're talking okay, so same program, same conference, okay? So, we're talking from 22 to 25, right? And he's I think 21 or 22 years old right now. It's probably 21. So he's gone from per 100 possessions, he's gone from 16 to 23 to 27 points per 100 possessions. In terms of 3-point attempts per 100 possessions, he's gone from 6.7 to 6.5 to 8.5. His 3-point percentage over those 3 years has gone from 29.7 to 32.4 to 39%. Now, wow. Free throw percentage, again, not quite clockwork, but it has now risen above the 60s. So first 2 years, 69, 61, and then now 74. His rebounding has gone up from his freshman year. His steals have gone up from his freshman year. And this is a steal rate. I mean, I'm equating for the fact that he was a partial starter as a freshman. He's taken on a much more prominent role. The fact that he is able to get better at just about everything, like his 2-point percentage. Look at his 2-point percentage. That's ridiculous. Like his finishing around the rim has gotten better. 55 to 66 to 65. Like again, to step into a more prominent role, typically it's your efficiency that takes a dip, right? Usually, when you
Yeah,
go
exactly.
from bench to starter to featured guy, you're one of the top 2 guys on your team. Your efficiency is going to take a dip because defenses play you completely differently. Also, I think an underrated part of going from your freshman year to your sophomore year to your junior years, there's just so much more film on you. So the favorite thing that you want to do gets taken away more and more and more. You need to develop counters. So for any player who is able to go and get better in terms of like their production per rate stats year to year to year is showing me that you have a tremendous work ethic. I think he might be a lottery pick. I really do.
Yeah, I think so as well. That's his range. I think 12 to 18 or something. That should be his range.
So him versus Carter Bryant. Carter is a little bit younger. Carter is a better shooter coming out of the gate. Where is the advantage for Rasheer Fleming?
I think it's the team that's drafting, man. Let's say it's Orlando. Okay, they want to win. They are in the playoffs now. They go Rasheer. But a team like the Nets, they should go Carter Bryant, no doubt. They don't need Rasheer's experience, if that makes sense. I think a team drafting in terms of where the development is going to be the most deciding factor.
Rasheer Fleming at 25, Carter Bryant at 25. Who's the better player for you?
For
Projecting.
me, Carter Bryant.
Carter Bryant's going to be the better player.
Long
So,
term,
okay.
long term. I'm
Okay.
always going for long term in the draft. But if I'm like the Knicks drafting at 25, I'm going Rasheer Fleming, no doubt.
I got you. I got you. So there's a little bit like Ryan Dunn last year, right?
Yeah.
Like you could take Ryan Dunn, or hypothetically in a different, universe, you can take Peyton Watson. Peyton Watson, you got to wait a couple years. Ryan Dunn, you get something much more right now, more physical development. I feel like it really is team dependent as well. I think for the Raptors, weirdly enough, taking a 3-year college player, 4-year college player, 5-year college player, like Jameson Battle was a 5-year college player. Jonathan Mopo was a 5-year guy, right? Well, I mean, technically he played JUCO and then he went very similar path to Chris Boucher. I don't think it matters to the Raptors whether you're 23 or 19. They're probably going to develop you the same. It's going to be like a very similar path. They took a very similar path with Jacoby as they took with Jamal Shead, and Jamal Shead came in as like one of the best players in college basketball. So I think that's going to matter a little bit less. But it's nice to know that you have the upside in favor of that. And I do agree with you on Rasheer Fleming. I think he's going to be really good. And I'm kind of like kicking myself that the Raptors don't have a second first round pick. Like at this point, like would I rather have 4 or would I rather have 8 plus 14? I'm like, I might rather have 8 and 14 than just 4 in this draft, weirdly enough. Now, there's another really athletic, big, jumbo-sized wing, and it's not just Carter Bryant, it's not just Rasheer Fleming. He's actually much higher on a lot of people's boards, and he had a really up and down season for Rutgers, and that's Arius Ace Bailey. You have Ace Bailey pretty high on your board. Why are you still high on him? What do you like about him? And does his court mapping and lack of, I don't want to say lack of passing, because I've watched him in high school and I know he's a pretty good passer, just like his lack of ability to sort of scan the second level of the defense, does that kind of bother you a little bit?
Not at all, man. If this make any sense, that if a guy who is the best player in Georgia goes to college in New Jersey, then you know the guy who's going to college in New Jersey is going to go there because he's going to do whatever he wants. I think that was his main decision to go to Rutgers. Why would you go to Rutgers if you're a guy like him, if you're one of the best players in Georgia? That's the first thing that I really was thinking about. And then after that, if I look at his game, is he's a shot maker. He just want to make shots. But if he's going to play like for a team like Kentucky, no one's going to ask him to do that. So he wanted to pay more freely to show the long-term potential. I think with him, you're only drafting long-term potential because if you put him on NBA floor today, yeah, you're going to lose that game, no doubt. I think he misses rotations on defense so much. Even at a program like Rutgers, that was their staple. But they play with 4 freshmen, so that was really realistic to expect that. So and that's not really on him or Dale Harper that they were bad defensively. But if I look at him, he's the perfect archetype. What every GM in the league dreams of. 6'9". He has loose handles, but that's fixable to a certain degree. But the shot making is just insane. And the shot selection, I don't really worry about that much because he really has to mature his game. Because he really needs to learn how to play the game, if that makes sense. He's not really adaptable in the role because in his high school career, he was the best player, no doubt. And he had to carry his team because the rest of these guys were barely Division One players, maybe one, maybe two, to say it like that. Nothing to talk down about to his teammates, but that was his situation. He had to carry his team. But in the NBA, he has to scale all the way down to a serviceable role. But I think every GM is going to take that risk because of the shot making, because of the size, because of the athleticism. I think he can develop into either. I always think it's not the same player, but Cliff Alexander. Do you remember him? It was Colin in town. It was Cliff Alexander. Okay, you always go for Cliff Alexander if that makes sense, but it didn't work out. With him, I feel the same thing. I think you should go for the long-term potential, but this is the biggest boom or bust project in this class, no doubt. Maybe even if you combine it with last year.
Wow. Biggest boomer bust.
Yeah, because if the shot making doesn't translate, what else does he do? In my opinion, if I look at this game at Rutgers, not that much. But in high school, that's not really reflectable because he's not going to have the ball 50% of the time.
Do you think he could become a significantly plus defender at the NBA level?
If you scale his role down to, okay, this is what you have to do, and focus on the 4s and the 5, and we'll think about switching later on, no doubt. But for that, he has to, I think, get more mature playing against other scoring heavy players in the G League. I think the G League is going to develop him so much, man. Despite the lack of defensive context in the G League, if
I
that
don't know
makes
if
sense.
he's going to be in the G League, but I honestly, for his game, I heard a lot of Kevin Durant comparisons early on. I really hated that. I hated it so much. I watched Kevin Durant at Texas. I'm a little bit older, so I still remember, scouting Kevin Durant at Texas in 2006, 2007, and I'm just like, the rim pressure is completely different. The court processing is totally different. KD is just way, way, way better. So when I think about comparisons for him, I've heard a lot of Michael Porter Jr. I think if you could scale his role down to an MPJ sort of like, maybe like, I don't know if he's this level of shooter. In fact, I'm pretty sure he's not this level of shooter, but like something to kind of reduce his game down to a taller Clay Thompson, where everything is just 1-2 dribbles and he doesn't get caught in the weeds. I think that could really help him. I think transition offense can really help him. Like he's pretty like fluid mover up and down the court. I like his movement patterns. I think it will really be curious to see in a better team context, like whether or not his off-ball patterns are a little bit better than simply just waiting around for the pass to kind of, do his AAU bullshit. So I think that would be much better. I think maybe, and this is just like going back to the Scotty Barnes thing. When you watch Scotty Barnes at Florida State, everything is so cramped for him, right? Because he's huge and the court is small. Get to the NBA level, spacing totally changes. Court's bigger, players are better, more spacing. So those wider angles to attack. Now, this burned me a lot when I put Jabari Smith Jr. over, someone like Paolo Banchero on my board.
Yeah,
I just
yeah,
assumed
I'm
that
feeling
that
you.
was I feel like an idiot for
That
that.
was really
So
a thing.
I mean, I always bet on size when it comes to wing players translating college to the NBA, which is why I'm, high on Rasheer. That's why I'm high on Carter. But I find myself lower on Ace than most. I end up putting him around 5, 6 on my board most times. I end up preferring other players because I just feel like when you have a top 5 pick in a draft this top heavy, you really can't afford to screw this up, you know? And so everything to me is going to come down to his awareness of his game. When I get him in the gym, does he think he's coming in to be a star? If he does, I'm out right away. Get get the hell out of my gym. If you think you're coming in to average 22 points per game and you're going to sulk if you end up in the bench role, or if I give you more of a role player role about your game transitions, if he comes in and says, okay, I know my game is really loose right now. I know my shot selection needs to get better. I know I need to learn the game a lot more. I know I'm going to have to be a much better defender at the NBA level. I'm willing to work my way through. Now I have a realistic pathway to this sort of potential actually being actualized, because it's like potential. It's like these general managers, they swear to God they're keeping their job 3 years longer than they should based on this stupid p word potential, right? But it's like at some point you have to ask yourself, what is the realistic outcome of this prospect achieving this hypothetical 99th percentile outcome that you see in your head? Because it's like, if they don't even understand their strengths and weaknesses, this is why I think pre-draft interviews and like really listening to what these prospects talk about, that's so important to me. If he thinks he's the best player in the country right now, I'm out. Like I'm just right now, I'm out. Like he could think, like he can think he will be the best player in the world someday. That's fine. Whatever. Confidence never hurt anybody. But like if he thinks right now, no, I'm going to come in with more, talent, whatever. No, like I fully think if he was a better player, I think Rutgers would have been better. There's another Rutgers player that I think I'm a little bit higher on, and that's Dylan Harper. A lot of people see him as the consensus number 2 pick in this draft. You don't. Why?
Yeah, but for me it's easy because if I look at Trey Johnson, who I have at number 2, I think he has everything but the right context, if that makes sense. And to understand the potential, his high school matters. And I know these NBA scouts value high school film a lot. And what I like about Trey Johnson is he was always consistent. He was always creative. He was pushing his creativity to getting better, if that makes sense. The
Mhm,
other side of the coin is you need to feature him with many ball touches, but he has the physical tools to feature him. 6'6". He is bulking up slowly because if he's doing it too fast, it's going to mess up his entire body. It's not really worth it. But he can grow into that, power two scorer.
mhm,
Because I want to stay away from Hall of Fame comparison because that's never good, even if you mean it good.
mhm,
But if I look at how James Harden looked like at Arizona State versus now, he's not. If he's going to be the same player, man, if give me my $1 million for hypothetically.
mhm,
But I think he's going to trend in a direction like that. He's going to start as a sixth man, and then at the point, okay, I need the ball. I need to go somewhere else. But the differentiator for him is the team has to facilitate his passing. He has to has the ball to facilitate as a passer. If that makes sense. If this guy goes to the Washington Wizards, for example, I think he's going to change that entire franchise. But if he goes to Utah or Brooklyn, it's not going to be a good fit. So
hmm,
if that makes sense, he's going to go to he's came to the draft in the bad year because he doesn't really have good teams to go to. Most of these guys are teams already have their guard. Detroit has Kate and maybe too many. Jaden Ivey was not really a good fit for them. Not really fair for him to put him on Detroit. And I think for Trey Jones, it's going to be the same thing because he's what 6'6". He's the natural two, in my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
but he should be a one, not because of the lazy tall point guard that everyone likes, but his game outside of college basketball was always a one as a passer. I think he's one of the most unselfish players, if that makes sense, despite him being such scoring heavy. He makes everyone around him better. And what I like about him the most is at Texas, we had all these, seven figures NIL type of guys, but he made it clear that was his team. And when I was looking at watching Texas, is man, everyone respects Trey. It's his team. The coach featuring him. Okay, you're gonna have to win the game for us. I think these intangibles are worth so much, man. Even if Texas barely made it to the field of 68. They won one game and then it was over. But that was the cap of this team. They didn't even win. They lost to Xavier, right? So, but there was never a team to win with. But it was a team for him to show what he's worth, despite playing among other guards. But he was loyal to his environment as a Dallas kid from
Well,
Texas.
it's
He could have chosen another program. Of course, Texas has money, so that makes it easier.
mhm,
But still, I like him. I'm in the P. I'm guilty to the P word as well, man. Potential in the right context.
mhm.
Because if he is his 99%, he's the second best player in this draft, no doubt, man. He won't be better than Cooper. I'm not really that far, but
You think his 99th percentile outcome is better than Ace Bailey's 99th percentile outcome?
in what this NBA is worth, it's give or take, man. But I understand what you mean. Let's see, he's better than Cooper, maybe Ace, because Ace is 6'9", 6'10". Those guys are always worth more. But let's say he's the third best player in this draft. Is 99% outcome.
Yeah, so per 100 possessions, he averaged 33.6 points, 4.6 assists, 5.3 rebounds. He shot nearly 40% from three on incredibly high volume, 11.4 attempts per 100 possessions. Took a lot of really difficult shots. 7.7 box plus minus is really good. 29% usage is star level usage at the college level. If you're watching for the 2026 draft, I think that's roughly the same usage that someone like AJ DeBonsa is going to have. Like, I
Yeah,
think AJ will have 29 to 32% usage. I think most of the top guys in next year's draft, like, they're probably going to be in that 28 to 32% usage. And again, high usage on a team that isn't great usually impacts your metrics significantly. I think the fact that he shot nearly 40% from three and everyone was trying to take the three away is a really encouraging sign for him as a shooter.
yeah.
I
Hey,
completely agree with you as him as a passer. I think, right now, 4.6 assists is not like jumping off the page to me, but a 2 to 1 assist to like it's like 2 turnovers to 3 assists is not like it's not crazy. Obviously this is not exactly where you want to be.
yeah,
It's not Tyrese Halliburton level, playmaking upside or whatever. But I do think that when I look at the passes that he does throw, there is a big difference to me, and I think this is something that I've push on this channel is advantage generation on assist is much more important than assist farming. A lot of people get assists through the general context of team motion, just swinging the basketball. But for me to create a layup or an open three because I myself am generating the double team and swinging it, maybe making difficult passes, difficult reads. As a 6'6" playmaker, I think you're right. The context would be different. If he was playing point guard and if people saw him as a point guard, he would be higher on a lot of people's boards, I think.
I think that's my main thing, man. Because I think the 3-2 assist turnover ratio is more impressive because of all the ball touches he has. Let's say he's a second guy on the team. That's different. That might be even not so good. But I like him a lot, man. But he has to really mature his game. He has to, with him, if you can give him the ball every possession, he will take it. But eventually, he has to play in the flow of the offense a little bit more. That's the knock I have on him, actually.
Mm.
But that's
Okay.
something for the NBA.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about front court players. A player that you were very, very high on per your big board is Noah Essengue. I'm high on him too. I love his movement patterns. I think his shot is coming along really well. I love him as a transition player, and I love his defense. I wanted to talk about Noah Essengue versus Asa Newell versus Colin Murray Boyles as you see them fitting in on the Raptors. None of them are lights out shooters. Obviously, all of them have, good defensive upside. How do you compare these three players and how do you see them fitting with the Raptors if they are the pick at 8 or 9 or 7, wherever the
Yeah,
Raptors end up?
I think it depends on how much time is he going to get. And the Raptors are going to get time. When I look at Noah Senge, ascending to the guy that he is today, and maybe when he's going to be in the NBA, is all these French players. They have one thing in common: they're always so modest. They don't really play selfish. They don't play with that FU attitude that you have to succeed in America. They
Mhm,
don't have that. Some of them act like they have that, but none of them really have. And they're always in a team context. It's the fundamentals first, then it's the team second. You don't. No one is the star. And when they get older, they eventually turn into a star. But again, they're always put in a box, so they're never free. They're always on a chain, if that makes sense. But Noah Senge never was the star in any of the teams that he plays with. He always found a way to impact winning. And I think his impact of winning is his body. He's so long. I think he's so tough, despite being modest. And he can bulk up. And he needs to bulk up to really make it happen. They don't really gonna be the same as players because I don't want to wish his injury history to him. But Jonathan Isaac comes to mind when I look at Noah Senke. His game is, I think, as a defender, is one of the best in this class because his feel for the game is so good, man. And I think in Europe, Lazio Farm Ulm is maybe the best team after Real Madrid and Barcelona in developing talent. The
mhm.
Germans are really ascending in the right direction in terms of how much they scout the rest of the continent and bring in players with their project, and they have, success. Jeremy So and Killian Hayes, and it's going to continue with guys from Ulm. Ben Saraf, the other guy in the team, is also a consensus first rounder. And for Noah Senge is the physical tools that NBA teams are buying. You have to have a developmental plan to make it work. Let's say you're a win now team with a top 10 pick and you're picking this guy. No, man, you're not doing the wrong things. You should go for Colin Murray Bulls if you're a winning team who wants to have a certain impact. But
Mhm.
with Noah Senge, he's going to be a star in the league, no doubt. And his team is playing in the Euro Cup, the second tier international league in Europe, and he's impacting winning there. And he's not really playing like a young guy. He understands angles so much, man, especially as a defender. And he's so good switchable. I think he's one of the. If you have physical tools, if you
Mhm.
have a physical tools draft, he goes top three, no doubt. But everything
Wow.
else surrounding it is just mystery. How well is he going to play against American athleticism? That's something that he really have to do that much. But what Ratio Farm Ulm does different compared to other programs in Europe is they try to simulate these situations because they are not afraid to play guys early in their career. They play in the
Mhm.
Euro Cup and they need to win, but they play Ben Saraf, they play him, the two guys who are barely 20. So that's something that he's really lucky with. That's something that I know that why he chose Ratio Farm Ulm to develop. But yeah, man, he's just, I think, in this class one of the best athletes, but he needs really developmental plan. I think the Raptors is the best fit for him, no doubt, because of how they develop talent. You can
How do
say
you
OKC, but OKC don't need him. The Raptors need him.
hmm. I mean, how do you feel about that jump shot?
Yeah,
Like
it's
we're
con-
looking we're looking at it on the screen right now. I'll slow it down even more. How do you feel about his shooting form? So, to pull this up here. Okay, so
yeah, that's the issue that we always have with these guys, man. They bring the ball up down too far. They don't
mhm,
need to. If you catch the ball at the chest, that's good enough because you're strong enough to, power up and get your release from there. But when in his defense is, if I look at how much his body has changed throughout the years, the frame is
mhm,
always late in catching up. So that's something that he has to change. But what's working for him is working for him. I know Tyrese Halliburton had a lot of criticism on his jumper, but he's shooting 40% for how many years? So it's really context based, but the jumper is not feasible to be a volume shooter.
Hmm.
It's a decent jumper if you're taking 1 or 2 a game, but he should really take 5 or 6. So the
What
jumper has to change. He
what
should
about
really
his
develop into
playmaking?
that sort of no dip type of guy from the what that guy in the Celtics has. What's his
What
name?
ab- what about his
Mhm.
playmaking? Because okay, so I look at a player like this. So I often will like to slow down film for prospects, and
Yeah,
I'll say, what should they have done? What did they do? Is it fixable? Right? I look at this offensively, defensively, shooting form, e- everything. So look at this pass here, right? We get this pass here, and he's asking for it high. Now he's not looking. He doesn't see this. This is immediately, I think, a good playmaker immediately throws this over the defense. Help side is not there. This is a wide open dunk. He waits. Now he sees it. Now, instead of throwing it up, which is the right move, he throws it across. In the NBA, this pass is getting picked off 10 times out of 10. But this is Europe. It doesn't get picked off and creates a much harder shot for his teammate. So even though this is being presented in his highlights as a positive play, I look at this as a negative play. Yeah.
yeah.
So, it's something that you can fix. I think if there's anything that I believe is about the Raptors that they can fix, it's playmaking from bigs. There's one thing that I think that this team can do is teach playmaking, teach ball handling, teach ball skills for bigs. So, how do you feel about his overall ability to be a connector in terms
Mm.
of like as a passer?
I
Can he
think
be a
this play was more of a role thing. I think he's more asked to play in the post, but the
Mhm.
NBA you're forced to keep the ball moving. And post entry passes are never to for the guy to score. It's always to draw either help or draw motion around him. So I agree he had to see that play immediately because that's what a decent playmaker should do. He's not he shouldn't even be a good playmaker to execute that read. But the motion of bringing the ball down, try to create something is in his role to create out of the post. And in Europe's half court heavy offense, that's the first thing that he has to do. As much it sounds weird from an American context, but if I look at his role in the NBA, he's not going to score in the post. That's prohibited for him. He's not strong enough. He shouldn't. It's a waste of a possession. So
Mhm.
ball moving is one of the most vital traits to succeed for a 4 or 5, and that's something that he has to learn. So that's more of the learning curve for him. That was not a good play. I totally agree, but that's the context.
Hmm. And Colin Murray Boyles on the Raptors. We touched on it a little bit in terms of well, we haven't talked about Ace and Newell at all. Either one of those players are like which of those, and also we have a Turkish person
Yeah, I
coming in
saw it,
here.
man. My
That's
hamsters.
that means my countryman,
Salute to
right?
you. Yeah, this means you're from the same, from the same place. It doesn't really have to be a city, but you can call your countrymen in
Countryman.
Hampshire as
Yeah, yeah,
well.
yeah.
You're from the same place. But this usually
Gotcha.
says that you're from the same local area. So
Mm,
he might be. So.
yeah. Okay, so Ace and Newell, Colin Murray Boyles, these two players, how do they fit in with the Raptors? Obviously, I've been really, really high on CMB going back to last year. I just love his defensive physicality. I like his lateral quickness. I just like how he cuts off angles. Super smart, super dialed in. Seems like a great kid. I think he's going to come in and buy into being a role player right away. He has zero ego about shot. Now, granted, this year he took a huge, huge load offensively and they struggled for it. But I think he is not the reason they were a bad team. I think he did everything humanly possible to make them a good team. Asa Newell, I haven't watched as much. So I'm curious, a lot of people are very, very high on Asa Newell. How do you compare Asa Newell, Colin Murray Boyles, and if you're the Raptors at 8, how do you rank these three prospects? Noah Essengue, Asa Newell, Colin Murray Boyles,
Yeah.
in terms of like
If
everything,
I rank,
how they fit, how NBA ready they are, all of it.
if I go to the list, Noah 1, Colin Murray Bowles 2, Ace Newell 3. If I go for the overall, not team specific, I
Mm-hmm.
think it's Noah 1, Newell 2, Colin Murray Bowles 3.
Oh,
I think it's more role versatility what you're buying with Colin Murray Bowles. I think Ace Newell fits in that mold of you have to have point guard play instead. For example, a guy like Luca, if you put Asa Newell there, he's a vertical lob threat. He's the best athlete of the two, of Colin Murray Bowles and him. I
Hmm.
think that's more of his role in the NBA. He's not gonna be, yeah, in my opinion, more than a developing pick and pop five who is improving his screening, but mostly thriving on his athleticism. I think that's the best role for him. But that Raptors don't need a guy like that. But if you have a defensive, a defensive stout defending 4/5 with Colin Murray
Hmm.
Bulls, where you're emphasizing switches, size, and mismatches everywhere, that's the guy
Hmm.
that you have to have in nice inside the lane, man, because his strength is the main buy. Asa Newell is not strong to like him.
But I mean, despite
He's
the physical
switchier, better
development,
athlete.
yeah, like the physical
Yeah.
development that still needs to happen for Ace and Newell, despite that shooting, I mean, 62.7% from two is ridiculous. Having a 9.6 box plus minus. So I look at a guy like a Colin Murray Boyles and I say, okay, maybe he'll always be a little bit stronger than Ace and Newell. But if I can make Ace and Newell a little bit stronger, yeah, he might struggle just like Alex Sarr struggled, as a rookie, and then he got a little bit better. If I get this guy 20 pounds of good muscle on him, combined with his athleticism, could he be like a really good starter for a really long time for someone?
That's where the if matters, in my opinion, because you always go for the upside. I totally agree, but if a guy thrives in an archetype like that, why would you change it? Colin Moore Bulls have proven himself with his physicality, and that's his role in the league. But I think for Newell, if that makes sense, he was always more athletic and bigger than everyone else. And in the NBA, is it going to be the same? I don't know. Of course, everyone talks about the SEC like no one's unbeatable in that conference, but they were good. But yeah, he's not playing NBA competition in my opinion. And Georgia heavily featured him. I think you must feature him if you want to get a guy like that. But this guy's an insane athlete, man. I don't like comparisons, but Derek Lively was never going to be uh, an XYZ dimensional player. He has one role, and that was with Luca, and now Luca is gone, and it's going to be uncertain how it looked like with him.
Yeah.
But with H. I see a similar thing because guys like him, you always have one or two in the class. But if the long term potential hits, yeah, man, he's going to be much better than Colin Marbles. Much
Could you
better.
could you see him being a center at any point, or is he like strictly a four?
Yeah, that's the tough thing about these tweeners, man. But I want to simplify it for myself is the league is getting bigger, but the league is also getting more versatile. So these tweeners are in a good position. Let's say you're solely the five, you're more vulnerable to be replaced. But this guy can be playing in multiple roles. But the athleticism is the main thing that he's going to draw his advantages with, not really something else, in my opinion. That's
I mean,
something that you have to develop.
is there an NBA comparison for Ace and Newell that you're comfortable with?
Mm, nah, not really, man. At the top of my head, I'm thinking about these highly, highly athletic fives. But
Hmm.
there's one that he can combine it with. I think Daniel Gafford with his athleticism. Yeah, man,
Hmm.
that's a top 30 center in the NBA every day of the week.
I mean, yeah, and I'm not saying he's a good shooter. He shot 40, like less than 30% from three, but he took a decent volume of threes. If he can get that up, Daniel Gafford plus a 3-point shot would be a cheat code.
Yeah.
Like if he has that vertical pop, and I think that's one thing. We look at this jump shot here. There's just a lot of extra motion that probably doesn't need to be there. There's a lot of posturing with the lower body. I think like this can be worked on. Like we see here, there's a little bit of driving. He's going to have this ability with his twitch athleticism. If he can learn how to shoot, I think it's a huge swing skill for him because if teams, I don't know if he's ever going to be good enough that teams are going to run him off the line, but if he can get good enough, the teams are gonna have to run him off the line. This completely changes the trajectory of the type of player we're talking about. And again, like as a freshman to come out with damn near 10 boxes minus in the SEC, not easy, not easy at all. Now, again, how do you feel about him as a playmaker? Because I really like Colin Murray Boyles as a passer a lot. Actually, I think he's a pretty special passer. I don't know if I'm Derek Queen, Colin Boyles. I have no concerns about these guys playmaking. But with Ace and Newell, how do you feel about him as a passer?
Nah, I'm not really sure, man, because I haven't watched enough Georgia to really have a full take on that. I'm just basing it on the high school film because he's played on such a stacked team that you have to watch everyone to be good prepared.
Hmm.
And playmaking is with Colin Moribus, just as you said, man. It's just everyone wants that short role playmaking, right? Everyone wants to
Hmm.
find the next Draymond. That's what everyone wants. And
Hmm.
that's why I was like, this guy has proven himself. He's playing in a similar way. These intangibles are worth a lot, man. Sometimes I'm willing to take what's already been proven now if it's really high in these archetype trees, if that makes sense. If a
Hmm.
guy scores 50 points, I don't care, man. He's not going to score 50 in NBA. No one's going to ask that. But Colin Moore Bulls is toughness, defensive grit, and passing. Okay, that's
Hmm.
enough. I'm willing to bet on him instead of the 99% outcome of Ace Bailey or of Ace and Newell, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. We talked about Khan a little bit. We talked about Jeremiah Fears, Kasparas. We've talked about Trey Johnson at length, and we talked about Ace Bailey. There's another player, actually, a couple players that we could definitely look at in terms of how they project as lead initiators. I mentioned that the Raptors don't have a lot of creation off the dribble. There's two players who maybe have a little bit of creativity, and that's Nolan Traore and Egor Demin. Now, you seem to be a lot higher on Nolan Traore than a lot of boards that I've seen, and you seem to be a lot lower on BYU's Egor Demin than a lot of people I've seen. Egor Demin was literally, I swear to God, we did a really, really early, not mock draft, but we were like preview of the 2025 draft class. And there were people telling me, Rob, Egor Demin's going to go over Cooper Flag in the draft. And I was just like,
Because the first two games, right? Yeah.
yeah, the first 5 games he was really good, but I'm like, wait until he actually plays some real competition before we make this assessment because I watched a little bit of him, before he got to the NBA and before he got to BYU, and I'm like, I don't know how people can get this high on a player this quickly, but that draft stock has fallen down. That being said, much like I said about Carter Bryant, sometimes a guy walks into your gym and just amazes you. If he walks into the gym, all 6'8", 6'9" of him, a little bit twitchier than Josh Giddey, a little bit more athletic than Josh Giddey. If he's shooting the ball well, I think someone's gonna take him lottery. But it could definitely happen, and that's gonna make someone really really happy at 15 or 16 when Rasheer Fleming is there.
Yeah.
What? How do you feel about those two players, specifically Nolan Traore and Igor Devin?
I like Egor a lot, man, because I think it was maybe 2 years ago. I followed it on Twitter. We talked a little bit. I was like, "What's your plan?" And he was like, "Okay, I want to be in the NBA, that's for sure." But I knew that Real Madrid was not really the best place for him to develop because Real Madrid, as good as they are development wise, they will always be biased towards Spanish guys. Those guys always get the advantage in terms of being the picking order. So he had to leave, and yeah, he chose a good program. That's principle, just like that. It's fundamental principles of okay, this is what you're gonna do. Not so much distraction outside of the floor. I think that's a good position for him. Not that he has a wild life or something. I don't know him that well, but I know that this is a place where he is best. It's more so disciplined, if that makes sense. That was the word I was looking for, disciplined,
Mhm.
compared to just like Europe actually. But he said, I'm a guard. I was like, nah, I don't think you should be a guard. I was like, no, I'm a guard, man. Really, this is my role. And he chose his college program to be a guard. And the first few games have shown, okay, I was like, okay, this guy's a point guard, no doubt. But the
Mm.
handles are a bit too loose, in my opinion. And the playmaking is maybe top 25 in the NBA today if you put him in the NBA. But to get to the playmaking, that's where it all stops because his handle is not good enough. If you're hard hedging or blitzing him, he's not responding properly because of he doesn't really have the reps to do it.
Is he the best
If
passer
he
in this
goes
draft
back to
class?
school, sorry.
Is he the best draft passer in this draft class?
Yeah, I think he is, man. I think he is in terms of execution, in terms of instincts. But if he's pressured, the composure goes away. if he's pressured hard, if he's blitzed, it goes immediately goes away. Look at that Houston game, and he was, I don't want to use the word humiliated, but these guys know, okay, we're much more tougher than this guy, man. We got this, and he did make impact. And in the NBA, he's gonna face similar guards, man. Great athletes who's gonna hard edge him or even blitz him, and what's he gonna do? In the NBA, to be a point guard, you have to always counter that, man. You have to always turn it into advantages to make it work. And Jaeger is not really ready for that. But there's the potential. If he's that, he is 6'9", man, and he is crafty. He gets downhill. He's not really that paint touch generator by speed or by athleticism at all. But in terms of his craft, in terms of how well he reads the game, there's not really that many guys better than him in this class. But it has to work and it needs time. And
If
I
he's
don't
not
think
a point
he's
guard,
not going to get him a lot of time.
if he's not a point guard, is there a secondary position that he could thrive in? Could he with a jump shot, could he do some of the Tony Kukoc stuff as a small forward, maybe
I
as a
think
wing?
not in this era anymore, man. He has to be much stronger to stay on the floor because defensively that's where a team's losing a lot of points with him. I think even
Mm.
at BYU, with a coach like that, man, they really weren't that good defensively, and that's really Egor's fault. But they didn't have the athletes for it, if that makes sense.
Right. I mean, look, it's funny you say that he saw himself as a point guard. Sometimes when you're 6'8", 6'9", everyone wants to put you in the post, everyone wants to put you on the wing,
Yeah,
and you have to fight for it. Scotty Barnes literally had offers from so many places in 2020. He went to the one program that was willing to let him play point guard because he saw himself as a point guard. And he's played plenty of point at the NBA, sometimes to very good results, sometimes to very mixed results. Scotty has handle issues. Sometimes he's not a great pull-up jump shooter. He's just learning to navigate the pick and roll because he's more naturally suited. Like, I think his skill sets are more naturally suited to the four for Scotty Barnes specifically. He's a much better roller cutter. He does a lot more in the short roll like Draymond Green or someone like that than actually leading a ball screen as the ball handler, where the craft, the handle, how low you can get, how much shooting gravity you have, whether you can, handle the double team, whether you read the court well. I think that stuff matters a lot. I actually agree with you completely. Someone was calling Cooper Flag the best passer in this draft class the other day. I was just like, no, not even close. Like, I don't think he's close. I think he might be like, I don't know where the number is, but I think there's several players in this draft class that are better. And I think at 6'9", that passing is special. Like, it would be
yeah,
special at 6'2", but I think some of the passes I saw him throw this year were like, wow, if his shooting and defense can come anywhere close, right? He
yeah. He's a
could
star in the
actually
league as
be
well.
he could be a star. Yeah. And I mean, again, you have him pretty low on your board. And if someone grabs him, like if the Boston Celtics get him, like if he falls all the way down, let's just say, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I'm saying like if he falls all the way down into like the late 20s somehow because teams really sour on him and he goes to the Boston Celtics, I could see like maybe some
Yeah,
sort of
it's
star.
over, man. They're gonna develop for 2 years. Then they're always lucky. The Celtics are always lucky, man, with these late first
Are
round
they are,
picks.
are they good or are they lucky? I don't know. I mean, there's a little bit of
Yeah,
both
I
there
think
for
it's a
sure.
little bit both, just as you said, man. But
Yeah.
I like
Uh,
Igor. But if he was going back to school, I would understand it. But if you're this high your draft stock, there's no way you go back to school
hmm.
because he's going to run out, I think.
There's a couple of really cool players playing over in Europe that I think because you are in Europe, you probably see a lot more than most draft analysts over here. One is Ben Saraf, who plays, with Noah Essengue, and the other one is Hugo Gonzalez. I am a big fan of both of these players. I'm curious, could we throw, I don't know if you've watched a lot of him, but Mario Saint Supry also into
Yeah,
that mix? Those
Torres.
Yeah, so those 3 guys as big ball handler type guards who've all kind of drawn this sort of weird Manu Ginobili comparison, all of them have. Who do you like in that group? Where do you see them kind of thriving? Do you think if you had to pick one of those guys to be successful in the NBA level, who would it be?
I think because of the ratio film pedigree, Ben Saraf is the favorite as of now. But I think who's the best player today? I think it's Mario Saint Supry, but his role is never going to translate to the NBA. I think he is the best scorer of the three, no doubt. I think
Hmm.
he is most fundamentally sound. I think he has the best handles of the three. but he is not really has the NBA body to really play in the NBA. His role is to have the ball and to be featured, but you have to have a lot more than just scoring prowess to succeed. So I think for Mario, is not going to work that good in the NBA. Some team might take a run at him at the second round and stash him for one more season and say, okay, let me reassess everything and see how we handle bigger competition. If he can go somewhere else, if he can go to a team
Mm,
that maybe can aspire to win a championship or something.
mm,
And I think the most overrated player of the three is Ben Saraf, no doubt. Man. That's just I'm just sometimes I'm reading one of these draft takes. I'm like, okay, are we watching the same player or what's the issue here? Because with Ben Saraf is everything where the NBA stands for is his area of development, in my opinion. I think he's not really two-handed, which he has to be to succeed. With his role, he's mid-range heavy. I think he's a very good playmaker, understands angles very well, but he is too ball dominant to to a degree where he has to produce to be effective, if that
mhm.
makes sense. Just like Kasparas,
Sure.
he has the same issue. I think the athleticism issues are being compensated by strength. He is bulking up and he is using his 6'6" well to be stronger and be more, add more role versatility because he is actually a point, but in the NBA he will not be a point. How is this going to work? Because his team is, yeah, he's basically the number one ball handler, and he
Right.
in this role is the best. And for the NBA, it's just context wise. Let's say I'm the Nets or something, and I have 6 or 7. I'm not taking this guy because it's not going to work in the NBA. You have to have more counters than just fundamentally sound. I think he's one of the best young players for Europe if he
Right.
stays in Europe. That he can grow to a EuroLeague level to be a starter there in 1 or 2 years. Not really now, in my opinion, because I think staying in the Euro Cup is better for him. But the top 20 stuff is, yeah, I'm like, okay, I'm just doubting myself, man. Because the thing is, he doesn't really have counters. If his plan doesn't work, does he have a
Mm,
strong floater? Does he have, the chest attack and immediate showing of his core strength to where he finds the angle and immediately finishes? He doesn't really have that. And at the FIBA level with the youth tournaments, yeah, you
mhm.
can see that he's much stronger than the rest of the guards that he was facing. So that's much
This is Hugo
helping him.
Gonzalez.
No,
Sorry,
I'm
I pulled up Hugo Gonzalez because I was
yeah,
wondering if we can get into Hugo
yeah.
a
I'm
little
sorry,
bit.
man. I'm just talking too much here. That's
No,
one of
no,
my issues.
no, no,
I
no
think
worries.
Hugo has the best translatable role, if that makes sense. I
Yeah,
think
I'm really high
defensively,
on
he's
him as
one.
well.
I like him as a how do you say it as a 2-3 defender, where
Mhm.
you can really. I don't really like the 3 and D label, but that's his role in the NBA, no doubt. He shouldn't be more than that, but he can be one of the best in that because of how well he plays the game, man. And where all these Spanish players are so lucky, man, that the Spanish national team every youth level plays in the same system. So let's say Spain has a new head coach on the
Mhm.
14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Everyone plays in the same system. So they are training these guys like robots, man. For 10 of them will play for the national team. They know what to do. I think with Hugo, the best part is he knows what to do because Real Madrid, you're never playing. Even in the league, when they can, afford to rest their stars, is you're never going to get too much minutes. But with Hugo Gonzalez, yeah, you can. If he goes to a team like the Milwaukee Bucks, if he goes to a team like maybe even the Celtics, he can embrace the role and just thrive in it. Man. If
Do
I'm
you,
picking 20, 30, I'm taking him between 20 and 30.
and you prefer Nolan Traore over all these guys, I'm assuming. So what do you see in Nolan Traore? Like he's smaller than all these guys, is worth noting, but some people see Nolan Traore as like a borderline first round pick. Some people see him as a lottery pick. A lot of people early in the cycle saw him as a lot, as a lock for top five. What is someone said sounds like Jalen Hood Shafino. It sounds like Jalen Hood Shafino. I
Yeah,
think the outcome will be very
yeah,
different.
actually, I like that one, man.
That's what for Hugo?
No, no, for Nolan Traore. Just like Indiana, Jalen Lushfino, not the Lakers spawn. But
Okay.
in terms of expectation versus reality, I think the expectation was before the season was okay. This guy's going to be a star in the NBA. I even saw. That's why I'm always laughing, man. Do you remember these NBA? I think GM in polls or something. The NBA pulls out every year.
Hmm.
There was one that said who's the best international player, and this guy got votes. Nolan Traore. That was before the season started. Man, I just bursted
Wow.
out laughing, man. I was like, okay, I'm gonna send you the tweet when I saw it. I was like, this is too crazy. But the hype was real that at that moment because of the Adidas Next Generation tournaments, because of the good summer that he had. I was like, okay, these guys are not watching Europe or just something else going on. But the team context with him is so hard, man. I think Saint Quinn is a small team. I read that they go to the with the bus to all the games. Let's say they play at the all other side of France. They don't
Hmm.
have private planes just like in college. He's just sitting in the bus for 10 hours to play a game. It's just crazy, man. He's just playing it. It's not a rich club, so the after court context is different. But the tough thing in Europe is that's why all these Americans don't succeed after college, even though they are much better players than Europeans, but they don't have the discipline. Is their feel for the game, the basketball IQ thing. That's the only thing that's going to keep you alive in Europe, where you're not physically good.
Hmm.
And most guards are just physically not strong enough or good enough athleticism to really have an impact. But the Americans do. That's always their advantage. But
Mm.
these guys know how to counter a guy like Nolan, a
Mm.
one-dimensional scorer when he attacks the lane. He's crafty enough to get downhill, but you know what he's gonna do. So when you put him higher in the scouting report, it's easier to defend him if that makes sense. That's stopping him from being a top five pick, in my opinion. But his understanding of angles, I like his handles a lot more than
Right.
most people on it because I know what he tries to do. He's an advantage creator for others first. He's the traditional point guard, actually, in my opinion. That's just inside the lane, core strength, finishing. I think he's should develop his core strength in the NBA to be much better because against stronger players that he faced in Europe, he was just so easily taken away, man, when he got 2 feet inside the paint. If you put him out of balance, it's useless. But
Mm.
for weaker teams, sometimes you would put up 20, 25 points. Okay, when I look at that lackluster defense that some of the teams were playing, if you put an average guy from the G League against the team, we would put the same numbers, to put it like that. But with Nolan is you have to give him a little bit of time. And some programs understand how to develop European players. Of course, the Spurs is the lazy one. If he goes to the Spurs, that's my dream fit. He's going to be a very good player there. But a team like the Raptors, they understand it like as well. But the Raptors don't really need a guard, man. So I really don't really see that fit. Maybe a few years ago, but not really the situation they're at right now. But this guy's angle creation is so good, man. I like him a lot. And he has that certain FU attitude with him, despite being looking so composed. Because when he
Mhm.
has the opportunity to be creative, you can really see, what everyone was talking about a year ago.
Yeah.
A
I
little
I think
long-minded, man, but I like him, and I don't like him for thousands of reasons. But this is really the explanation for me.
I think he's an underrated passer. I think I question how athletic he is. Like at times, sometimes we can start to see guys as being athletic, but he's not like an above the rim finisher.
Yeah, I
And
think for
that to
European standards, maybe he's a good athlete, but it's
yeah,
just he's very fluid. I think that covers up a lot.
he is fluid. How do you like his defense?
Not so good.
Yeah. And I mean, when you're not like to me, there's sort of a I don't like small guards. First of all, I was a small guard.
Yeah,
So I'm 5'11. So I
small
was a
guard,
small
screen navigation issues. It's over.
exactly. So I personally, a lot of people who play point guard as an undersized player. I mean, I have had my fair share of matchups where I was 2, 3 inches and sometimes 15 to 35 pounds lighter than my opponent. And I knew that if I didn't fight, I was dead. I had to fight 5 times harder than sometimes a player who's bigger than me because they could just post me up and I had just had to fight earlier in the possession. So to me, if you're going to be an undersized guard in the NBA, there's like so many prerequisites that need to happen first. First, you need to be a good jump shooter. Has to happen. You just cannot thrive in the NBA as an undersized guard if you can't shoot. Number two, you have to compete like hell. Like you have to be so dog defensively and have such a high intensity motor And number three, you have to be a pretty relatively good athlete for your size. Like, I'm not saying you have to jump out of the gym like John Morant, but like you need to be a really good athlete at that level. You can't have like, and you need to be strong. Like you need to be strong because sometimes you're going to get cross matched. And I feel like he has a lot of holes in his game that to me, it's like maybe this is a player who's going to be much better in Europe, and maybe his future is in Europe. Maybe he's the type of guy who comes 2-3 years in the NBA, decides it doesn't work, and then goes off and is a great EuroLeague player. I don't know. We will see. I know you got to get out of here very quickly, but I wanted to talk very
No,
briefly
I'm good,
about.
bro.
You're good? Okay,
Yeah.
good stuff. Because it was a good conversation. Bigs. Okay, now I think a lot of people are aiming for Khaman Malauch or Derik Queen in the opening round, but honestly, I think there's a chance the Raptors don't get either player where they're drafting. I think there's if Utah does not get the number one pick, given they've made many mentions of the fact that they could look to move off of Walker Kessler, do they just trade Walker Kessler and draft Khaman Malauch and restart the whole clock with a much younger player? Maybe. Derik Queen, I think, fits beautifully with Jordi Fernandez's system in Brooklyn. And it seems that Brooklyn is going to pick ahead of Toronto. So both these guys could be off the board before the Raptors pick. And I think that's going to happen. So my perspective on this is if the Raptors don't get their, backup big man of the future, and maybe Ulrich Shamshi is still pretty far away as a 19-year-old kid, still figuring out pro basketball, there are some really good bigs in this draft later on. Some of them include Ryan Kaukbrenner, right? That's one of them. I'm sure you've watched plenty of Ryan Kaukbrenner. I was thinking about, hold on, let me just pull up my private chat here. Just some names that come up. Alex Condon, right, from Florida. Rocco Zikarsky, Australian. Janai Broom. And then one of my favorite players in this draft, which is Thomas Sorber for Georgetown. Now, I don't know if Thomas Sorber is going to be a second round pick. There's a very good chance he probably goes mid-20s, but he had a pretty, bad injury at some point. So maybe, teams are a little bit sour. Big man
Yeah,
injuries.
ankle injury is always an issue.
Deron Holmes, like there's a lot of, maybe some people see that as a red flag and then he moves to the early second round or something. So among those five players, how do you feel about those five players specifically? Are there any centers that maybe I'm missing that you are really high on?
I like Kaukbrenner, man. That's one of my favorites.
Hmm.
I think, yeah, the easy thing is Patrick Ewing, 4 times Defensive Player of the Year in the Big East, and
Yeah,
Ryan Kaukbrenner had the same thing, so that's crazy. But
that is
this
crazy.
guy can defend so well without fouling, man. That's worth me so much. And even if he has, he's the best. Even if his girlfriend's dad is the referee, he is playing so much in the right way. And they broke up, so the dad hates him. And he's defending so well. He can't call a foul on how he defends, man. I think that's worth so much for what NBA teams try to do: maximize possessions, not giving away free throws. Managing these how do you call it? Managing I'm not gonna, I'm blanking on the word, but maximizing potential offensive rating and defensive rating because of the margin of error. You're
Yeah.
improving the margins of error with a guy like him on the floor because he's not going to put himself in foul trouble and he
Hmm.
can close games. That's one of the best things outside of durability for the five to have in the NBA. And this is what this guy has, man. I think, and it's not really. You're luckily based in Canada, so I think the Canadians can appreciate it a little bit, but Americans can't screen for nothing, man. So that's something that American players will always struggle with, and they
Canadian
give away their
Canadians
NBA
can't
rosters
screen for
plus
anything either.
Europeans because they can screen.
Yeah.
But I like it how this guy screens, man. It was like a crazy combination of two uncertain things for an American five. Is if he's 25, I still don't care because this guy is a clear pro. And what I like about him is he's playing as that rim deterrent, but also on the offensive end. And his presence is drawing so much attention, just like Zach Edey to a certain degree. Of course, not as good as Zach Edey, but if Ryan Kalkbrenner is waiting for that entry pass, any help defender would be at least worried. Okay, if he gets it, I have to do something. I think that's something that's worth something as well. And he added a 3-pointer to his game as well. I think he is one of the best backup fives in this class. Even if he signed in the second round, he's going to sign guaranteed money.
Hmm.
And the best thing is the hips, man. That's just I like him. I have him in the 20s, I think, late 20s, because I think that's his range. A
Okay.
team like the Boston Celtics will take him, man, and then they're going to look like geniuses
Yep.
again.
White guy, mid-20s,
Yeah,
Boston Celtics
white
every
guy,
freaking time.
Boston.
Every time, man. Every time. Okay. Zikarsky, have you watched a lot of him this year?
Early season, and then I was like, okay,
I
NBL
get it.
is I like the pace, but the league is not that good, and the draft media is very Australia heavy. And not to call these people out, but they are very biased toward the NBL Next Stars program. I don't really like that program because the NBL is they always are role players with very limited minute at best. And AJ Johnson didn't really need the NBL to be a first round pick. His high school film was enough. And
Right.
they didn't feature him and he was still drafted. And I
Right.
think, other guys from the NBL, the NBL didn't really help. I compare them to the G League Ignite. They're just good. The program didn't add that much. The pro setting is good and they play in a fast pace, but I think he's too far away, man. If someone drafts him, I would be flabbergasted. Okay, what did they see? Because against his own age group, you can see why he's an NBA prospect, but against all the players, the ID goes away. I
Hmm.
think he is a year too early to at least be in consideration, man. But if a team has a plan and takes him, I can blame them. But you have to
Hmm.
have a plan.
Right. There are some centers, obviously, but I mean, the Raptors are also pretty thin in terms of long shooting power forwards. There's a couple, and ironically, because the Raptors head coach is Serbian with ties to Spain, I'm always thinking if like there's a couple of pipelines that I think the Raptors are especially plugged into. One is Africa because of Masai Ujiri. So Basketball Africa, NBA Africa Academy. I feel like if any prospect is coming up those ranks, the Raptors have a good idea of identifying those players, having the right insight, having all the medicals, having earlier access to that player. So Ulrich, Khaman, etc. Okay, Pascal Siakam. There's been a lot, right? I think also Europe now because of Darko Rajakovic, he's coach in Spain. He has good connections in Spain. We have good connections in Spain as an organization because one of our ex head coaches or one of our ex assistant coaches is a big deal over there. We have a good pipeline into Spain and Europe in general. And because Darko is from the Balkans, I feel like typically we'll have better idea of Balkan players. There's a couple of really decent, interesting big men from the Balkans. Bogoljub Markovic is one, and then Michael Ruzic is the other. Uh, between like those players, how would you look at those players compared to some of their American contemporaries at the power forward spot? Someone like Yaxel Landeborg.
Nah, I think Bogoljub is the best player, but I think I wrote about him. I think it was in the summer before the season or just before the summer.
Hmm.
Off ball defense, that's where it all ended for me, man, with him. Because offensively, he is perhaps one of the best 4 or 5 prospects among Europeans outside of college. Maybe even the best. But when he's defending away from the ball and when the pace of the game is going up, it was like, okay, man, this guy's processing the game so slowly. It just needs time. But this is the type of guy that a team like the Raptors should draft
Right.
because this guy has a complete game, in my opinion, man. He's just, if this makes sense, the feel for the game offensively and defensively is just day and night, in my opinion. Because defensively, it looks like the game is too fast for him, but offensively, it's like, oh, he's too good for everyone else because of how well he understands the game. I think that makes it a little bit more feasible that he can improve. And maybe he even needs the American environment to play in.
Hmm.
Because if he's playing among, Serbians, they are just one of the best in Europe in terms of developing guys, and they always win these Euro tournaments. Maybe a little bit less in recent years, but they're always one of the best teams on paper. It's always the
I'm.
same thing.
I mean, for a
And this
6
guy
foot,
is,
yeah, for a 6'10", 6'11" guy, his movement as a front court player is insane.
yeah,
Like
and
he
the
is
motor is very good as well.
Yeah, and he attacks. Like I like that. He plays through contact. He's
Yeah,
not
he's
like
tough.
physically domineering player, but a lot of Serbian prospects are very, very tough players, and he's got a
He's
really
out toughing
water jump.
guys.
And we looked at a lot of jump shots in this. We were looking at video of certain players' jump shots, Asa Newell, etc. I look at his jump shot and I'm like, this is butter. This is like a beautiful jump shot. You know, I don't know how you feel about his jump shot, but I like watching him shoot, and I'm like, okay, like this is clearly a guy
Yeah,
who learned how to shoot,
I'm
like as
just
a bar.
watching this guy seal off. Just all I'm interested in, man. Honestly, I'm more of the traditional forward play, if that makes sense. Of course, when evaluating, I was looking at the jumper, but I'm like, what is this guy doing from the post? Because I think playing as a hub in the post
Mhm.
is maybe better suitable to create leverage for his shot. Because of
Right.
how look at this guy's hips, man. How he was sealing off this guy. I think it was 2 or 3 clips ago. This is crazy, man. This is just NBA level. Okay,
Look at that
he's
pass.
always going composed. You see, okay, the double comes, no issue, man. What's he gonna do? Take the ball away from me? He has that toughness. He has that FU attitude that you have to
Yeah.
have.
Yeah, I got to tell you, there's two players. I'm gonna give ourselves a plug here for the conversation we're having because I don't think people, maybe some people realize this is a great conversation. Gregory, shout outs to you. Some people are
I
saying great
appreciate you, Greg.
conversation, but I think I've listened to so many draft shows, and to me, it sounds like endless regurgitation of the same points, and I know exactly where those points are coming from, and people are not really making their own observations. How many people on the internet right now are talking about Mario Saint Supry and Bogoljub Markovic? Like literally,
And
there aren't two. There's only two. These two right here on the
yeah,
screen.
just
So I
Mario
really,
Saint Supry, and it was like this guy's hiding in plain sight. How can you, if you're really into Europe, how can you overlook this guy? I'm like, okay, this guy's not getting buzz. But it's just as you say, it's just consensus bias, man. It's just Gavoni has to put him in a list, maybe at 99 or something, before people are like, okay, this guy is worth to dive into.
but this is why teams like the Spurs, the Raptors historically have done so well because when you hire pro scouts that are willing to go beyond the consensus and are willing to say, okay, I'm going to go into a gym and actually watch Nolan Traore as opposed to just relying on the buzz and the narrative to decide whether I'm going to do it. I'm actually going to go and check him out. And I think we often say teams take on the personality of their best player. I think organizations sometimes take on the identity of their lead executive. Our lead executive is a scout. Masai Ujiri started out as a scout for the Orlando Magic. He was like couch surfing, making no money, doing it for free. He cut his teeth basically in the NBA as a scout. His greatest, like, okay, yes, the championship in Toronto. Yes, he won a championship in Toronto, but his greatest success to me, Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby, like finding these players, right? Fred VanVleet. Like you don't win a championship without those three players. You just simply don't win. You don't have enough depth because if you remember how the Raptors constructed their championship, how many 2-for-1 deals did we do? We did so many 2-for-1 deals. Every single move that brought in an upgrade, we were giving 2 players for 1 player, 2 players for 1 player. We traded Terrence Ross plus a draft pick to get Serge Ibaka. We are trading Marcus All. So to get Marcus All, we traded Jonas Valanciunas plus DeLon Wright plus a draft pick. So it's again 3 assets for 1 asset, 3 assets for 1 asset. Consistently doing this over some period of time, this is how you end up in a very top-heavy roster with no depth. But the Raptors,
Yeah,
they
that's
had
where
this
scouting
entire
matters.
yeah, but the Raptors had this entire third string that they could just bring up to the second string, right? Like when Fred VanVleet got here, which is the craziest thing, he was undrafted rookie out of Wichita State. And, the Raptors clearly identified something in him because, again, Masai is a scout. He's not looking at a guy and saying, oh, he's 6 feet tall. He's not going to make it. He's seeing the toughness, the grit, the defensive, toughness and the shot making, etc., and the processing of Fred VanVleet. When Fred got here, he was literally the fourth string point guard behind DeLon Wright, Corey Joseph, and Kyle Lowry. And by year's end, it was like, okay, he's second string point guard. You know what I mean? So this is just like, and yeah. So I just think the Raptors are so good at this because they're so good at scouting. And I think if there's any team that is going to identify a guy, a Rose saying, did you guys talk about Noah Penda? We did not. We did not talk about Noah Penda. I don't know if you have some thoughts on Noah Penda. There's a lot of prospects we haven't talked about, but I mean, I think we've covered a lot of players
Yeah, bro.
in this draft. What's an ideal situation for the Raptors? Let's just say, the Raptors do stay put at 7 and the Raptors, keep their 39th pick. Give me like a dream scenario for the Raptors that Raptor fans can be like, okay, this is what I hope happens. Just because there's a lot of people in this audience who haven't watched a second of these players play. So, it could be like, okay, Ace Bailey falls to 7. Okay, fine. That's an ideal situation. Or Khaman falls to 7. And then, maybe a player falls to number 39. What should Raptor fans be hoping for to happen in this draft?
Well, honestly, and I think it makes a lot because you mentioned the connections with Africa and the GM. I think going with Command at 7 would be my take. And I think I started the show with the same because Command is what this team needs because he needs to complement the rest of these guys. And if you take a guy like Queen, it's not going to work, man, because Queen wants the ball, BI wants the ball, Barrett wants the ball, Scotty says, it's my team, I want the ball. It's not going to work. On paper, it looks great, but it's not going to work. But I think a team like Command can really take the best out of the other guys as well because
Yeah.
of the defensive gravity. And I think if this coach wants to be a defensive team and has the defensive mindset and defensive principles with ball movement, with pace, this is the guy that you need to build through as a 5. And the rest of the league want to play 5-out offense, great. But this guy can shoot as well, man.
Hmm.
And he shot against Team USA as well, right? It was one shot, but it says something. It said something about how fearless he is, despite he looks so modest. He
Hmm.
looks like if you walk up on him, he will be afraid of you. While we're what, I'm not 5'6", 6'7".
Hmm.
It's crazy because he's so modest. But this guy is what this organization would develop the best. If he goes to the Nets or something, I don't expect 50% of the outcome. That's not me wanting to, talk good about the Raptors because the Raptors, they could make a lot of mistakes as well, just like any other franchise in the league. But this is the guy that would be my pick at 7. And if they don't, I would go with Noah Essengue.
Hmm. Okay. Grade the following situation. Let's just say, okay,
Okay.
it's July 29th. We already know what happened with the draft. And I tell you, hey, Ersin, the Raptors took Carter Bryant at 8, and they took Ryan Kaukbrenner at 39. Grade the draft.
Yeah, that's A minus, man.
A minus?
Getting Ryan that late, awesome. But
Okay.
Brian at 8 with what you need, it's a good pick. But at 8, you could go more long term potential to put it like that.
Yeah. I think in this conversation, I think you've given me more reason to look more into Trey Johnson film. I weirdly enough think there's so many defensive issues that people have with his game right now. And because he's not being projected as I think a lot of people are projecting him as a shot making small forward. Like I've seen a lot of comparisons to TJ Warren. I just think he's so much better passer than TJ Warren. So I think if teams view him that way, like a poor defensive version of a shot maker, I think he might actually fall. I think there's a good
Yeah.
chance he could be there at 7 for the Raptors. And so, there's a world in which somebody rises and the Raptors at number 7 are looking at Trey Johnson, Carter Bryant, and Khaman Malauch, at which point you're like, holy shit, just make the right choice. There's also a chance that all 3 of those guys go top 5. It's possible. You know what I mean? Like, I really don't know. We'll
The
see.
draft lottery will matter a lot, man. Who's picking where?
I completely agree
For
with you.
Cooper, it doesn't matter, but I
I
think
think
even for 2.
I think even at 2, like, I mean, I was thinking about there are certain teams where I'm like, okay, could they? Like, if you look at the Spurs, right? If the Spurs end up moving to number 2, are they really going to take Dylan Harper over like all the other players that are available? Like, do they feel that strongly about Dylan Harper that they're willing to overlap positionally overlap De'Aaron Fox and Stephon Castle, both of whom are backcourt players, and then none of those guys are great shooters. So it's like you're going to play all 3 of them together. Like, what are we doing here? It might just end up in a situation like a Reed Shepherd situation where it's like you don't have minutes for all of these guys. So I wonder if the Spurs do end up at number 2, if they would just trade down. But I don't think there's any doubt in my mind that Dylan Harper will probably go number 2 in this draft. And if he's not going number 2 to the team that picks number 2, they'll probably just trade the pick and trade down. Because I think there is that building consensus of like, this guy is number 2. But yeah. Anyways, man, this has been a great conversation. I don't know if anyone has any questions for you. I think they should definitely reach out to you. And
For
I
sure,
think
man.
hang on. I'm gonna pull up your X profile just to give you a little bit of shout out there for anyone who wants to follow. Here we go. This is Ersin's X profile. You can definitely go follow him. It's 8,400 followers. Clearly, a lot of people who are looking at his draft, insights. He's an aspiring pro scout with like really, as you can probably tell from the 2 hours we've talked, like a lot of insight into this draft. And I'm just going to pull up again the final plug for your Substack. Definitely, his link to the Substack is on his X profile. But for those of you who are very big, not fans of Elon Musk, who have deleted X,
Yeah.
uh, for obvious reasons, here's his Substack. And if you're looking for a quick way to access it, definitely check out the description. It's plugged in the description below. Any final thoughts, Ersin, before we get out of here?
I appreciate the plug for the Substack, man, because that's been my thing for the last 2.5 years. I think I passed 200 articles. That was crazy, man. Every 2-3 days, I'm trying to put something out, but it's 12 p.m. right now. But between 12 and 1, sometimes 2 a.m., those are my hoops working hours. And of course, you
Mm,
steal some company time in the process as well. You have to do it with the company now. Otherwise, it's with a family, etc. And priorities being family number one. Of course, you can't do this. So I try to watch film late in the nights,
mhm.
right during working hours, and try to keep things afloat, man. So right now it's Eastern, so tomorrow likely I won't do anything. Not that my family celebrates Eastern, but it's a public holiday in the Netherlands as well. So and
Yeah,
that's a good thing.
it's so
But the
interesting.
long story short, man, I just love watching hoops, man. I try to watch effective. If that makes sense. If I watch a full game, I want two prospects to watch. So
Yeah,
I will watch. I won't watch, let's say, a random mid-major game unless I'm looking for these sleepers. But I'm trying to follow up. If I'm looking at Kansas State playing X and a player at X stands out, I'm looking for a game where X plays against another team with a prospect, so I can link between things. But otherwise, yeah, you
yeah,
have to watch film, man. And then I saw a question about Noah Penda. And then if you would ask me, can we talk about it? I would say no, man, because I wrote about him last summer. I haven't watched a second this season of him, so I have no idea. I'm
yeah,
basing it on year-old information. While this guy had a great season in Europe this year, but I haven't seen him, man. So, but shout out to
yeah,
you as well, man. I think you have a large following on YouTube. I saw it. I think it was about 12K subscribers.
yeah, yeah.
And of course,
I
I
mean,
know
look,
Canadians love their basketball as well. So the
yeah,
Raptors are in a good position there.
yeah. I mean, we built this channel up from scratch. Literally, just it's not like I'm taking a following from TSN or working for a network and
Yeah,
then bringing it over here. No, it was literally from scratch, from zero to something. I used to write for Bleacher Report. I've had like a lot of time, to process the game. And I definitely feel like draft coverage is something that bugs me on a broader scale, not to, throw anyone under the bus, but like I think there's so many
yeah,
people who just don't watch, don't care, just repeat, just, okay, this is the mock, this is what the mock is saying. And it becomes bad information. You know what I mean? Like, it's like you're saying this player's a non-shooter, this player's a non-shooter. And it's like everyone's saying this player's a non-shooter. It's like, how many jump shots have you watched? Like, how can you say they're a non-shooter if you've watched one? You haven't watched a single game. So I just think that it's important that we have innovative people. This is episode 1. Episode 2 is going to be great as well, and we're just going to focus every week to bring on draft analysts that I follow, that I know they know their stuff, so that our audience can be the most informed about these players. And I always found, honestly, covering the draft, it's the best way to learn the league, man, because you end up like having this insight into players way before they come to the NBA. So now when they come to the NBA, you're like actually watching their development with a very new eye. So
yeah, exactly. And
yeah,
you know what to look for because you know how the
exactly.
league is trending. And what does the league need? The league doesn't need a 6 foot guard who scores 40 a game, right? Okay, it's nice, but is he gonna
Mm,
translate?
yeah, we didn't talk about Walter Clayton at all, but like I like him. I
Yeah,
like him. I like him. I like him a
I
lot.
like the man. Man. He's tough.
Yeah,
This
you know
guy.
the thing that I said about Kon Knueppel, where his eyes don't rattle. Same thing with Walter Clayton, man. Same face. I like stoic people, man. Like in tough moments, sometimes like I used to watch basketball like as a fan up close, or even when I'm in the game, right? And it's like tough tournament down 2. When I see the defender whose eyes are darting everywhere, I'm like, that's the guy we need to attack, because that's the guy who's going to be
Yeah,
flat-footed, fall, and just screw up. And it's just basketball is a mental game. And when you find a guy who's like 12 degrees cooler in under pressure than everybody else, you're like, that player has a remarkable advantage because most people are just so frazzled in big moments. So yeah. Anyways, man, thanks a lot for coming on. Appreciate you. And yeah, thanks so much. I appreciate it
Thanks,
tremendously.
man. Thanks for the invite. This was a great chat, man.
Yeah,
And shout
great.
out to Raptors Nation. And if you want to do an episode again soon, yeah, man, let's do it. I
Let's
love doing this.
let's bring you on after maybe the draft lottery or after the Raptors make their pick. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Raptors prospects themselves, and let's keep in touch. Okay.
100%, man.
Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers.
Yeah, cheers.